Okay, we should be live. Please let me know. Chat, let's see. How are we doing? Good, good. Seems I can hear my stream. Awesome. All right. So, Shana Tova, everyone. That means Happy New Year. Well, it means Happy Holidays. But you say it because it's the Jewish New Year. It was Rosh Hashanah, just ended, which is the official New Year date, I guess. It's the date of the Jewish New Year. And then there's 10 days, and we have the holiest day of the year in Judaism. It's the Day of Atonement, which is called Yom Kippur, which is where you fast for 24 hours and, reflect on your sins. And so this week is a good week to focus on God, I think, for all of us. And so we talked about God quite a bit in the last stream, and I hope that one was coherent. Please let me know. But I feel like it was kind of long. This one, I'm going to try and go a bit quicker. We're going to discuss a video where Jordan Peterson is in a debate with 20 atheists on Jubilee, and we're going to talk about why these types of discussions regarding God and religion don't go anywhere a lot of times. And Jordan Peterson is kind of famous for having these discussions that are entertaining but don't seem to go anywhere when it comes to religion when he's engaging with atheists. When he's engaging with other theists, which I would call him a theist, I would consider him a theist, at least. Probably, I don't know for sure, but he certainly seems like he wants to be if he isn't. And if you want to be, then maybe you are. I don't know. That I don't want to answer for him, but he does talk about what it means to be Christian a bit in this, because he's challenged on that. We're going to talk about why I actually think that his answers on what the definition of Christianity is wrong, and why this is such a frustrating thing for people when they engage with him on this. And I think rightfully so, even though I like Jordan Peterson. I think that he gets some linguistic things wrong, but he's not alone, and he's famous. He has this very famous debate or discussion with Sam Harris from years ago, and it was like 3 hours or something like that. I can't remember. It was in 2017 maybe, and it was discussed as like the least productive debate ever. That was like really, really long, and neither one of them made any gained any ground with the other on any perspectives that they were holding. And that means that you are not engaging. You're either not using the right language, and therefore not able to make the right claims, and not able to engage with other people's the claims of other people. And then also it could mean that you don't have honest intentions and your goal is just to win, and you were never going to change. You didn't go in there not to change. You shouldn't go in there just to change. You should go in there into any debate. I hate the term debate. With the goal of understanding. And I used to work for Dennis Prager, and I used to work with Jordan Peterson, and because I worked for Dennis Prager, and Dennis used to say, I prefer clarity to agreement. I was always so impressed by his ability to just treat people well when he was engaging with people who didn't agree with in a live setting. And he truly did want to understand them. He always kind of sat there and just thought while they were making their case or stating their perspective. And I always admired that. I thought that was the right way to do it. He asked more questions than he made claims, and that is an important thing when you're engaging with somebody. But we have this toxic, terrible culture of that comes from academia that creates false incentives and false rewards. We're going to talk more about this next week, because we're going to talk about a stream next Tuesday, by the way, The stream next week will be on Tuesday because Yom Kippur is on Thursday. So I will be doing the normal stream on Tuesday instead of Thursday. It will be a great one. That one is epic. I'm a little bit too tired to do that one tonight, to be honest. I didn't sleep well last night. And I also wanted to leave that one for like the last stream before Yom Kippur. And it's a talk that Kerchai Mongol had with Jonathan Peugeot's brother, who I'd never seen before this, about the Bible and biblical symbolism, scriptural symbolism, and how to understand scripture. And I don't talk about that much on this stream, but we're going to talk about it next week. Last week we talked about defining God. This week we're going to talk about how to discuss God, discuss religion, discuss really any of these really difficult topics, but especially, fundamental topics like morality, God, and definitions of things. So, and then next week we're going to talk about scripture. And I don't share my thoughts on scripture that much on here because it's something you either get or you don't. And I'm gonna, hopefully I can help anybody who wants to try and get it, honestly, get it. And so we're gonna talk about it. This week though, Jordan Peterson. So let me state for the record, I really am going to disagree with some of the ways in which Jordan Peterson goes about things in this. Not because, not like morally or anything, but I think he's just doesn't have the right words, and he's not defining things properly, and it's causing a lot of people to be frustrated, and has for years at this point. And I can understand some of it is justified, some of it is not, but some of it is. And I will just state for just personal record, Jordan Peterson was somebody who, when I worked with him, he kept his word to me when I asked him for a favor. And I asked him for an interview once, and it was not the most convenient time for him. And he was like, okay, yeah, let me go like get settled. And it was at a hotel that I ran into him at, and then I'll come back in like 20 minutes. And a lot of times when people who are famous tell you that they're going to do things, if you're not paying them, they might not show up. Like, they just have a lot going on too. They genuinely drop the ball a lot more than you'd think. It's kind of funny. The more famous somebody is, usually like the less competent them and their team is in terms of coordinating things, it seems. If you've worked with a lot of people who are well known, I don't want to say famous, but well known. And but Jordan Peterson, he came back 20 minutes later, did the interview with me. He didn't have to do that. I didn't pay him. And it was not convenient for him. I'll always appreciate that. He kept his word. It's an important thing. And I respect him, and I think he's one of the better philosophers of our age. And I think that speaks to, one, his humility, but also to the lack of very formidable philosophers. He is a decent philosopher, but you'll see tonight, hopefully, that some of these topics should not have been nearly as difficult as they have been for literally decades at this point. So please hit the like button. Comment any questions you have in the live chat. Comment any questions down below in the comment section if you are watching this not live. And I appreciate everybody here, and we will get started. So, hi, hello, Paulina, my beautiful, wonderful wife, is checking the sound for me in the live chat always. Get married. You will have somebody to support you even when you are live streaming late at night about philosophy. So this is the stream that we're going to look at. It's on Jubilee, which is a huge, huge channel. And Jubilee is a very interesting channel. I don't even know how old it is. I feel like it's pretty new. It definitely took off during more recent years, where they have this very interesting format where somebody sits in the middle of a room and makes a statement, and then people who want to engage with the statement are all seated around, usually people who are opposed to you ideologically and whatever you're discussing, and they all run to the chair as quickly as possible, like musical chairs, and then that person engages on the subject, and everybody listens, and as soon as everybody gets bored or thinks it's not going anywhere, and the majority of people raise their hand saying like, I'm over this, then you get voted out, and like the next person gets to step in. Very interesting. I actually like that it causes people to engage with each other who are not in agreement. But I will just state for the record that debate, again, it should never be the goal to win. And we're going to see examples of that tonight. And we're also going to see examples of people who are honestly trying to understand each other and what a difference it makes. You win nothing by winning a debate with somebody. If you win everything if you end up being the one that realizes that they were in the wrong and then takes on a more truthful and honest perspective, I guess. And so if you win a debate, you might win admiration by a crowd, and you might win some applause, and you might win a participation trophy, but you don't really win. And actually, everybody loses if you win a debate and you're wrong. It's funny because, in school they try and teach you how to debate. They have you take on a perspective that you don't agree with. Sometimes I've had to do this. I don't know if you have. Comment in the chat, let me know. And then you have to argue for this position. And I think that this is actually awful. I used to think this was so smart. And I think that it's terrible, actually. It's teaching you that you should be able to try and win on procedure alone, not on substance, on the truthfulness of your statements. And the reality is that if your statements are true, you could lose a debate and you will still win in the end, because you know what is true and the other person might not. So I think teaching people to debate things that they don't believe in, or even teaching people to debate things that they do believe in, instead of just trying to understand each other and how to properly express what they believe in, what you are causing is a system of selective pressures that disincentivizes truth, because the goal is not to understand, it's to get the most applause. And so that's a terrible thing. It's actually like a very subversive, destructive thing to teach people, is how to argue for things that they don't actually believe in. That's awful. You're basically teaching people how to lie, and that there's also there's like a reward in it. Like if you win the debate and you don't believe in what you're arguing, you've been rewarded for lying. That causes a reinforcement loop for everybody in the culture. It's really bad. And so I like this video of Jordan Peterson and these 20 atheists, self-described atheists, really anti-theists, because there are some that are very clearly there to beat him, and everything about their actions shows that. What they say, the arguments they make, how their tone, where their eyes are focused, even, and the types of arguments that they make, whether the honesty of the arguments that they make. And then there are people there that are genuinely trying to understand, even though they disagree with him. They want to actually understand him, and he does try and understand them, and I respect that. It's a good thing. So I don't judge anybody for being an atheist or a self-described atheist. It's really an anti-theist. I was a self-described atheist for 24 years of my life, and I'm not anymore because of science and logic and examining nature and logic and language, not scripture. So that's what I'll say to that. I can understand both sides of this. So, first clip. Let's get to it. When I say understand both sides, I'm not saying people who claim God doesn't exist are correct. I'm just saying I don't judge them. That's all I'm saying. So, okay. Here. I closed my... Here, perfect. This is his central claim in the beginning of the discussion.
Jordan Peterson. I'm a clinical psychologist, a professor emeritus at the University of Toronto, an author, a podcaster, public speaker, and today I'm surrounded by 25 atheists. My first claim, atheists reject God, but they don't understand what they're rejecting.
Good afternoon, Dr. Peterson.
How are you doing?
So this claim here that atheists...
Okay, I don't want to get too into this because this is how we got into the weeds last week and how we kind of went on and on and on. But you have to know the definition of God, the actual definition of God, in order to actually discuss any of this. So before we start, the definition of God, and it is the actual definition of God. It's not my definition. It is the definition. Anyone who truly believes in God would say that this definition is correct. Anyone. And God is the singular, initial, eternal, and all-containing sentient someone that is existence itself. You are basically like a cell inside of a body of a being that is a someone that has its own will and its own goals, and who intentionally created everyone else within him. That is the definition of God. That God is explained in many different theological traditions, and there are different aspects of that God that are explained in many that are focused on by many different theological traditions. But that is the universal, true definition of God, logically deducible, inevitable. It's not my definition. That's God. So, an atheist doesn't usually believe, if somebody calls themselves an atheist, and I know this from personal experience, doesn't believe that they don't think of God as that when they are thinking about whether or not they believe in God. But when they're discussing God, that is often how we think of it, at least, is we know it's someone. And then some people will be like, they'll bring in Christianity into it, or Judaism, or Islam, and they lump that in with God too. So they'll say, well, which God? The Jewish God? The Christian God? No, there's one God. There are different theological traditions, and God is someone, the first someone, the all-containing someone, the most powerful someone, the eternal someone that we are all within. That's God. You can disbelieve that existence is a sentient being, or you can believe that existence is a sentient being, but that is how you know whether or not you're a theist or not. So what's interesting is, and I've showed this before, but I'm just going to show it really quick again. Maybe. This was when Kirchheim Mungol brought up a quote of mine about how to understand God and how to think about God on Jordan Peterson's podcast once.
To one another. Because what you're trying to do is to say, is God real? Well, what you're not saying is, we know what real is, and it's this. And does God fit into that category?
It's also, we know what God is in order to assess it.
Well, because you could reverse it and say, is real God?
Mm-hmm.
It's the same question, right? It's the same question.
So here's one of this is something.
It's not the same question.
His own theory of everything. He said, ordinarily, here's how it works. We have a definition, and then we look for evidence, and then dismiss what we've just defined if we don't find the evidence. He said, perhaps what we should do when it comes to God is instead of looking for God and then not finding it and then saying God doesn't exist, you use the fact that you didn't find evidence of God as an indication that you should alter your definition of God.
Yeah, well, that's
Can I
sure.
declare the
That's
answer?
a
Now,
perfectly
it
reasonable
sounds-
approach to that problem.
Right. Obviously, yeah. However,
Now, that's a really good observation, right?
Yeah.
It shows you how tricky questions like that are, right? It's like, well, maybe you're looking in the wrong place. Maybe you formulated your search incorrectly. Like, you don't know. Because let's say you're aiming at the highest reality, right? It's like, you're aiming at the highest reality. Well, how do you know you have the question formulated properly? Because if you did, well, you'd have already found it. And so you might say, well, does...
Exactly. That last statement was correct. If God exists and you don't see him, given that you're inside him and he's everywhere, you are looking for the wrong thing. That's what that means. And if you are an anti-theist or a self-described atheist and you want to honestly consider whether or not God exists, you have to assume he does exist and then look for evidence that that would be present given his existence. But if you don't see it already, that means that you have to assume your definition of God is wrong, and that what you're looking for is not what you should be looking for. If you don't assume that, then you actually are unable to honestly consider the possibility that God exists, because the only thing that you're considering is whether or not your conception and your understanding, which could be false, of what God is exists. And that might be very limited and very wrong, actually. And I think that it is. If you don't see God, then you're looking for the wrong thing. It's funny. It's like somebody on one of the streams recently on here, or they said in the live chat, they said, I said that cells are probably sentient beings, and they were like, how could you ever say that? That's ridiculous. It's like, well, have you ever watched a cell go about its entire life, be born from birth until death, see everything that it does, every time it eats, every time it poops, every time it interacts with its neighbors and goes to work and does its job every day, and then goes to sleep at on its off hours, whatever? You would see all of that if you looked at cells from go about their lives. Any cell, you would look at it and you would see it. It would look different for some different types of cells, but some of them are more mobile than others. But that's true of living beings, organisms that we know of that exist, that are animals. Some animals are more mobile than other animals. So, yeah, I mean, it's important to just recognize the limits of your perspective. If you're inside God, what are you expecting to see? Like, you have to assume you're inside God if you're going to question this. You're never going to just see God sitting there, like, probably. You're inside of him. It's like a cell looking for a human. You can't see a human if you're a cell inside of a human. You see the inside of the human, and it doesn't look like a human to you. It looks like weather. That's what it looks like. It looks like the weather in the rainforest and the city and whatever. But this is what I'm just saying. It's important to recognize what you really should be looking for, and the limits of your perspective, and also the degrees of freedom that you have. You can actually also understand quite a bit. I will say this: you can understand and deduce quite a bit more truths about fundamental reality than you could probably ever imagine. And I say that from experience. But you also will never be able to perceive everything, because you are, by definition, a piece of everything, not everything. And so you can't perceive everything. And especially, you're not everyone. So you definitely can't perceive everyone. You only could perceive everyone if you could look at everyone at once, and that includes those who you are within as well, and that you just can't. There is a limit to your perception. You have to operate within the boundaries of that. So this clip, though, where Jordan Peterson makes this claim, he goes, atheists don't know the God that they're rejecting. I know that that's true. They're usually associating with the Bible. Like, if the Bible's false, then God is false. That was me. And that's not how you should approach considering whether or not God exists. There is a universal definition of God that transcends all theistic traditions that are true, and is universally agreed upon by any theistic tradition that is a true theistic tradition. So in this clip, though, that we're about to show, continuing, this guy claims that he has gone to school to study religion, and then is saying, how can you possibly say that I don't understand God, if given that I went to school and studied religion? So we'll watch this and we'll talk about it.
Don't know what to reject. My background is in studying to become a traditional Catholic priest, daily mass, daily rosary, going on long retreats, deep into the magisterium and biblical hermeneutics. Like, I was thoroughly in it. And it seems like I do know what I'm missing. Is there something that I missed over years of study, both this issue formally and living out religion so deeply?
Well, you obviously feel that you missed something when you were practicing for the priesthood. Your aim was off then. So there's always the possibility that it's still off now.
What was off about my aim in the first place?
I don't know. That might take a long time to figure out. But
then it seems kind of like this no true Scotsman type of fallacy in which you're the arbiter of people's aims and how they understand those aims to be. How is it that you can claim that people don't know something that you know about their life despite not having met them?
well, it's obviously a generic claim, just like the atheist claim that there's no God is a generic claim. In your case, it would have to be specified more, and I'm not claiming to understand what was going on in your mind, but my experience with atheists is twofold. Is that they have a very reductive notion of what constitutes God, let's say in the Judeo-Christian tradition, and they've often been hurt by someone who was religious or by the religious enterprise, or perhaps by God himself, so to speak, and that's left them with an animus.
But I think that you have a reductive view of what atheism is. You've defined religion so broadly to include any sort of having aim in life, any sort of cultural archetypes, or having a metaphorical substrate. And atheism to you is a very specific type of like 3 people in the world that are these Raskolnikov type of, they want to get away with a perfect murder. It seems like you have the reductive view of what an atheist is.
Well,
the problem with this exchange that's going on right now is that one of them is talking about religion and the other one is talking about God. And they're not the same discussion. They're not. Religion is a tradition. What we call religion is a tradition that even in and of themselves are not necessarily competitive. They are each have their own specific focus. And they're not the same. They're not 3 different race cars racing against each other. One's a race car, one's a helicopter, and one's a boat. When you're looking at Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, they're not in the race that people think. Communities of people compete, but the theistic traditions, when you're just defining them by their scriptures, which is how they are really defined, it's by who adheres to each one of them. If you want to understand Christianity and Judaism and Islam, you don't say, what is Christianity, what is Judaism, what is Islam? You say, who is a Christian? Who is a Muslim? And who is a Jew? What makes you a Jew? What makes you a Muslim? What makes you a Christian? That is how you understand them. And then if you want to look into, the whole holistic framework of them, you have to examine their scriptures. You don't go to listen to what people who claim to be adherents of each of these traditions claim, because they're always going to be wrong about something. And you don't know what they're wrong about unless you first go to the scriptures. And so that's the only chance you have. It's not even a guarantee, because scripture is deep, but it is the only way that you can even have a chance at knowing whether or not, judging whether or not somebody's understanding of the theistic tradition that they claim, aka the religion, is actually true and that they actually understand what they're talking about. So, but Jordan Peterson is talking about atheism, and this guy's talking about religion. He's saying, I studied Catholicism. How can I not understand? How could I not understand it? And the thing is that when I was at MIT recently, and I went to the oh man, what was it called? The conference of Human Augmentation Conference, and I talk about it in my stream recently about Stephen Wolfram. Stephen Wolfram was there, and a bunch of other people involved in these physics discussions online, these metaphysics, fundamental reality discussions. And this guy came up to me, and I had this booth about Sentient Singularity Theory, and he was like, I asked him what he's studying, and he was like, I'm studying, what was it? He said, religious studies. I'm studying. I'm getting my degree in religious studies, and I was like, wow, really? Like a theist, at MIT, like pursuing their master's or whatever it was. I don't know, maybe it was bachelor's, who knows? But and then I was like, I wasn't expecting that. And he was like, oh, I don't believe in it. I just find it interesting. And I had no way of engaging with this person any further. I do not understand that at all. The best that I can the best attempt that I can come up with of understanding that is, you like the lore. It's like it's like getting a degree in history, or the Lord of the Rings, or Harry Potter. You think it's fake, and that doesn't. I'm not saying that to be, what is it? When you are just diminishing of somebody or putting them down, it's like patronizing. I'm not saying that to be patronizing. I say that honestly. You think that this book is a bunch of fairy tales, and yet you have devoted your tuition, your debt, and your time, and your potential future career aspirations to studying this book that you think is a fantasy. And maybe you think that there's also a unique history associated with it, probably. So, but you've devoted your time to studying history of a book that you think is fantasy. That you cannot claim to actually understand that book if you think that it's not true. I understand why people think that would not be the case, and who are you to say that? Basically what this guy just said to Jordan Peterson. Who are you to say I don't understand what I claim to understand? Well, like I said, there's a difference between understanding God and understanding a theological tradition. You can understand all kinds of things about a theological tradition. You can understand the history of it. You can understand the scripture of it, or you can memorize the scripture of it. You can understand, the institutional structure of it. How does one become the Pope? I have no idea. Does that mean I don't understand Catholicism? I don't know. I don't understand the institutional hierarchy of it because I don't know it. I will say this, I understand God as well as, I don't want to say as well as is possible, but quite well for somebody who is not God. That's what I'll say. Only God really understands God completely, but when I say I understand God, I'm saying in the context of being a human. So don't think I'm claiming to have all the answers, but I'm not. But I understand, theological traditions usually better than most people who I've talked to who went to school for to study these theological traditions. And the thing is they don't end up if you don't believe it, then you should assume that you don't get it. If you assume that you do get it, and that everybody else in the world who could possibly believe that these scriptures are what they claim to be, divine revelation from God, or divinely inspired, then you basically just think that everybody's a moron for believing in this book, and yet you are devoting your entire career to and scholastic focus to studying it. Well, that doesn't sound like somebody who actually understands what they're doing. They just might think that they do, and to even try it doesn't even make sense to devote effort into trying to understand it if you already do not think that it is, and you're convinced that it is not correct, and that and yet you're gonna claim to get it. There are clearly people that do get it. They form their whole lives around these theological traditions, and you have too. You just think that it's a lie, and they think it's the truth. And it makes sense to formulate your life around something that is super literally, fundamentally true, and applicable, and in maximizing your wisdom as you go throughout life. But if you don't think it's wise, and you don't think that it's true, and yet you're going to devote your focus and your time and effort to it, that doesn't make any sense. It doesn't sound like somebody who really understands what's going on. And you shouldn't even claim to. Like, just go find something that you do understand and believe in, and advocate for it. Any kind of anti-ideology is inherently destructive. To disbelieve in something, to think that something, like anti-theism, which is really atheism, what we call atheism. It's just a terrible term that doesn't actually make sense when you break down the word. Which is why, again, this guy says, I think that you're being reductive of atheists, that there's only one kind of atheist. No, Jordan Peterson's definition of atheist is correct. The term is wrong. Atheist is not the correct term. Anti-theist is the correct term. It's somebody who does not believe that existence is a sentient being, that fundamental existence is a singular sentient being, that was the first being, that is the all-encompassing being, that is, the most powerful being that we're all contained within and subject to, and that being is a someone with its own will. Like, that definition of God is very specific. We all know intuitively that is the definition of God, because God is always thought of as someone, not just something. If God is something, then anything can be God. You could say, well, maybe the universe is God, maybe math is God, maybe love is God. No, then we don't need the term God, if that's the case. So you shouldn't believe in say I believe in God, and that God is math itself and logic and the universe, but isn't someone. Don't then just say I believe in the universe. Okay, cool. No shit. Like, so do I. But what is it? Do you believe it's a sentient being or not? No. Okay, then you don't believe in God. If the answer is yes, then you do. And that is how you get to the definition of anti-theist, which is really what people who call themselves atheists are. It's not a lack of belief in God. Otherwise, why are you arguing with somebody on it, and you're debating with them about it? If you have zero belief and interest in it, I have a lack of a belief in God. No, you disbelieve in God. That's what is going on. And that's not a judgmental statement. It's just honest, and it's fine. You should be honest. There is goodness in honesty, as long as you are honest and kind, which you never need to be honest and cruel. You can always be honest and kind. And I think that kind honesty is more true than, allows you to be more true than the harsh truth, the cruel truth. It's not cruel unless you're only looking at it from a limited point of view, I think, as a theist. But this is the problem, though. Again, is it just highlights exactly. They're talking past each other. They don't even realize it. Talking about God is not the same as talking about religion, and aka theological tradition, which is a better term than religion, because they're not the same thing. Judaism is not doesn't even have the same purpose as Christianity, and and is not the same purpose as Islam. The definitions of what is a Jew and what is a Christian and what is a Muslim are different, and not just, oh, I follow the Christian scriptures, oh, I follow the Jewish scriptures, oh, I follow the Muslim scriptures. No, what makes you Jewish is something specific. Your mom is Jewish, or you converted to join the Jewish people. To be Christian has a very specific means something very specific, and we're going to talk about that later on when they ask Jordan Peterson, what does it mean to be Christian? And I disagree with his answer very much, actually. As somebody who does believe that at least Jesus is the Christ, like is the Messiah. I don't think he claimed to be God, but that's for another day. You can, whether you call me a Christian or not, is up to you. But there's really two possible definitions of Christianity. One of them I would fit. One of them I would almost fit. And neither one of them is even close to what Jordan Peterson's definition is. And we'll talk about it. But let's go to the chat. I'm glad to see you're still doing your thing. Thank you. I am glad to be doing my thing, and I'm glad that you are here to join me while I'm doing my thing. Greetings all. Greetings. Bring me a sense of comfort and stability. This is the most consistent I've ever been with anything in my life, is my live streams every week. I tried releasing pre-produced videos, and I try all the time. Ever since I started the channel, I wanted to produce one pre-produced video every single month at least. Cannot do it. I don't care about views, and it's how you get more views and subscribers and grow the channel, but that's not the goal of the channel. And it doesn't motivate me because I don't see a like or a view as a person. But when you're engaging with me in the chat, you're speaking to me, I feel like I'm interacting with people, and that this is meaningful. So even if sometimes there's like one person in the live chat, especially in the past, or especially if it gets really late. And that is way more motivating to me than a million likes on a video. And I manage PragerU's YouTube channel, so I know what it takes to get a million likes on a video. There's many different ways to do it, but it's not by doing 3-hour-long live streams late at night. And I will just say, like, thank you guys for showing up, because that's what keeps me coming back. If you didn't show up and join my live chats, I don't know how long I would do this. And I'm motivated every week to do this. I love doing this. Even when I don't address the chat for a while. So I'll eventually get back to it. We're going to figure this out eventually. Yeah, tonight. And even the things you're able to perceive, you're not necessarily going to be able to prove. That's true. And you should be, when we're talking about fundamental existence, fundamental truths, we're looking for things that are constantly confirmable to you. And also maybe to others by you, but at least to you. And that which is fundamentally true is never untrue. It's never not true. It's never false. So you can't falsify it. We always look for, if something's not falsifiable, we don't take it seriously. And so if something's not provable, we don't take it seriously, because they're kind of the same thing. But what you're really looking for is something that is constantly confirmable. And that's how you know it's a fundamental truth that's accurate, is if every time you go to check it, it checks out. And you can check it on in countless circumstances throughout your life, endless circumstances. Not saying every circumstance, but endless circumstances. There's always a new thing to apply it to. Yeah, we'll get more into that later. When it comes to fundamental nature of reality, even the things okay, that's me. Pharisees. Exactly. What religion of people who claim to be like understanding religion is the Pharisees, but it's just about religion. This is me. I love how atheists tries to project any form of religion that they might be participating in, regardless of the supernatural aspect. Well, this is what we're going to get at in a minute, is like, I actually agree with them that Jordan Peterson, when he says, I hate the term religion, by the way, because I think that it's confused us. That's why I use the term theological tradition, because to say Judaism, Christianity, and Islam and Mormonism, they're all religions, implies that they're all the same thing. It's like they're all SUV automobiles, and you just pick which one is best. No. One of them is a boat, one of them is a plane, one of them is a car. And like, they're not comparable like the way that people think. People compete, but scriptures do not. Any true scripture is not in conflict with any other true scripture. And that's why every theological tradition has the same moral prescriptions. women cover their hair, very modest. Women dress differently than men. They wear dresses and skirts and that are, very modest, and men wear shirts and pants that are modest. And men grow out their beards in every theological tradition that is actually adhered to by its adherents. Obviously, people can claim to be Muslim or Christian or Jewish or whatever and grow and shave their face, but if they're a man. But if you really take the scripture very seriously in your life, you usually end up having a community that men grow out their beards. Women cover their hair. Like, these are very consistent things. You get married immediately. You don't have sex you're not supposed to have sex outside of marriage. You're supposed to have lots of kids. These are very consistent and universal values that pop up in every tradition. And you should judge a tradition by its fruit. You cannot judge it based on reading it and its scriptures, a few times and thinking that you're going to get it. Like, you don't know the language that they're speaking. People will say things like, we don't I'm Christian. I don't believe in Allah. I believe in God. And it's like, Christians in the Middle East call God Allah. And Jews that speak Arabic call God Allah. But if you speak Hebrew or Yiddish, you might call God like Hashem or Adonai or something but people will argue over this because that just shows like you cannot expect to just judge things based on words. You have to judge them based on their fruit, which is why Jesus said that we should judge things based on their fruit. And that's that you will know whether or not something is true by its results. Okay, let's try and move a little quickly. Define. So they basically claimed Jordan Peterson describes religion, though, as like any kind of reverence. And this is a problem, though, even though, again, I don't like the term religion. We'll call it a theological tradition, a divinely inspired theological tradition, or a scriptural theological tradition. This is not, believing in this or believing in God is not the same as just believing in awe, believing in reverence. That's like saying I believe in God, but God is just a rock in that we all live on, like that's inanimate and it lacks awareness and will. No, then you just don't believe in God. If you don't believe that a scripture is divinely inspired, then you don't believe in that religion or theological tradition. Or if you disbelieve in that scripture being true, you think it's false, then you disbelieve in that theological tradition. You cannot just claim that, oh, everybody's religious. This was a very popular and common thing to say when I was working with Jordan Peterson a lot, and he would say things like, you claim to not be religious, but you have reverence for this, and you feel moved by a piece of music or something. And at first everybody was like, wow, I do feel moved by a piece of music. Maybe I do believe in God. And everybody jumped on Jordan Peterson's bandwagon. And I really respect and like Jordan Peterson. But while I think that this could have been a helpful thing to get people to start feeling God more, it couldn't end there, and it hasn't progressed from that type of rhetoric, unfortunately. But that's because he doesn't have the right words. But I'm here doing this tonight to try and provide the right words, not to say he's wrong, but just to give, hopefully I can communicate the words that he is trying to and is not succeeding. The same thing even with the people who are arguing against him. Some of their critiques of him and frustrations are very legitimate when it comes to defining religion, defining God, defining Christianity. These are very specific definitions, and and they're highly constrained, and you cannot, they're not vague. And so if you can't, if you give a vague definition that could also apply to other things, then that's not a good, it's not a true definition. So.
Productive view of what atheism is. You've defined religion so broadly to include any sort of having aim in life, any sort of cultural archetypes, or having a metaphorical substrate. And atheism to you is a very specific type of like 3 people in the world that are these Raskolnikov type of, they want to get away with a perfect murder. It seems like you have the reductive view of what an atheist is.
Well, let's start with your claim. How do you define the God that you're rejecting? Like, what is God to you? You studied in the church, you found that unsatisfactory. How would you characterize what you rejected?
I think the average Christian believer, when they say that they're Christian and they believe, they mean some sort of God that is all-powerful, all-perfect, is somehow involved in the matters of this world, and that we look to them through wisdom and with the Logos incarnate in Christ. And it also seems like you don't believe in religion in the way that the average Christian says that they believe in religion. And there are as many gods out there as there are believers, because everybody has mutually exclusive and different views of what God is. So it seems
Well,
like...
if everybody had mutually exclusive views of what God is, no one could speak to each other. The mere fact of communication presumes a commonality of assumption and definition.
That's
and so
correct.
It's certainly not the case that I regard any archetypal manifestation whatsoever as equally religious. So that's not a real claim. Let me give you an example. For example, there's a sub-narrative in the story of Moses where Moses is rewarded with a glimpse of God. Okay, and that's one of the ways that God is characterized in the Old Testament stories.
Yes.
Now Moses is a faithful servant of God and a good man. At least that's the case within the confines of the story.
One possible interpretation.
It's the case within the confines of the story, obviously. But
Well, not obviously. When we look at the Bible can't precisely say anything because there are so many different exegetical and hermeneutic views of this particular book, and that everybody has agreed or everybody has disagreed historically on. It seems like even the most benign detail about a book this big, and it seems like you can only say that the Bible says something if you first presuppose that it's univocal.
So your claim essentially is that Moses in the Old Testament plays the role of a villain or is irrelevant? Because the alternative claim
I'm
is
saying that we
he's
can't
good.
know because we can't talk to those authors.
If you are going to start with the presupposition that there's nothing I can say about any of these stories that you're not going to disagree with from the perspective that there are multiple potential competing claims, then I can't speak with you. So
And we also have
Exactly. Anybody that comes in and says we can't actually know whether or not anything we assume is true, dude, that is not helpful. That is not a helpful statement. I also think it's false, but I understand why people think that, and because there are some things that you cannot know whether or not it's true that you might believe. I don't know who the Messiah is. I think I do, but I don't know, and we won't know until he arrives or comes back. And but I do know that God exists, and because it's just one of them is dependent upon a choice by God, and the other one is not. God has no choice but to exist insofar as I am able to understand, and through my logical, I guess, like meditations on it, and I think that is impossible for God to even end his own existence, and it's inevitable that he does exist. But who the Messiah is might be dependent upon a choice by God, so you can't know what that's why you can't know until it happens sometimes with certain things, because if God exists, then sometimes some things are going to be dependent upon choice. That's the same thing when you're interacting with people that you know. You can't know the decision that they're going to make before they make it. You could think that you're going to know, and you probably will be correct if you actually have a decent understanding of that person, but you don't actually know. They can surprise you, and so there are certain things that we cannot know until they happen completely. They are finished, done, completed in front of us, and not completed behind the metaphysical curtain, not partially completed in front of us and then completely completed behind the metaphysical curtain, but completely completed everywhere that it takes place. And so this is what Stephen Wolfram calls computational irreducibility, and it just is a very kind of obvious but profoundly constraining idea that you cannot know what will happen in certain instances without actually them happening, because causality has to run its course, and you can't compute an outcome before it is created, essentially. Some things you can do that with, some things you cannot. Whenever it involves choice for anyone, from anyone's choice, whenever someone's choice is a factor in the equation, including the choices of your cells and things like that, then you cannot know what will happen. You'll never know if you're going to get cancer or not. You could smoke your entire life and never get cancer. You could never smoke a day in your life and you could get cancer. Some of this is dependent upon the choices of your cells, actual choices, and it's not predictable by a computer program because it is dependent upon choices. So, but those are the only instances where we should really assume that we cannot deduce the truth. And any other time that you can formulate a proper question, then you should also be able to deduce a true answer. And if it is just purely causal, it's indeterministic. If you're talking about a deterministic context, you're not talking about the context of including of choice. So it's just important to know. Don't ever assume that you can't understand something. Years ago, when I created my model of cosmogenesis, which is, I have videos about it if you want to look at it. It's meant to I wanted to understand how God created the universe, which sounds like, dude, you're never going to understand that. And I'll never understand everything about it, but can I understand way more than I currently understand about it? I wasn't sure. And at first I was like, I shouldn't even think, should I even think that I can understand that? And then I was like, well, actually, if I assume that, I definitely will never understand anything about it, including the limits of my understanding. And so I had to assume that I could understand way more than I did, which I didn't understand anything. It's like we had a Big Bang, it was 14.8 billion years ago, and it was very hot. And it's been cooling off and we're expanding, which you don't understand any of that. People told you that. And you don't even know what it means, and neither do they. And they told it to you and you just repeated it. And that was me. And I didn't want that. I wanted to understand what were God's constraints that he had to work within when he created others, other beings, the universe, all the rest of us. And I had to assume that I could deduce the answers. And I did assume that. And I produced absolutely amazingly profound, mathematical constraints of creation within 2-3 hours of thinking about it. It wasn't even like it took weeks and months of thinking and testing and doing experiments or whatever. It was like, I just needed to sit on the couch and think about it from the right perspective for a couple hours. It's amazing, but it's also, once you realize how that's done, it's totally expected that you could do that. And so if I'm going to make the claim that you can understand a lot more than you think you can than what most people think that is possible about any system that is a deterministic system or an object system, not a subject system. And you could, that you'll also never understand everything about it. And that's okay. But you can understand more always, because you can never understand everything. If you ever could understand everything, then that's the only time that you could ever possibly not understand more. If you can have any understanding of anything at all, then you have to assume that you could understand more, because information is attached to other information. It doesn't exist in a vacuum. So don't sell yourself short. But Jordan Peterson's right. We all know what God means when people say God. It means someone. God is someone. He's someone with will. He has goals, and he has emotions and feelings about what we do, or just about, things that he has feelings about, and that's God. You can add more things to it, but that is enough to define him. So that guy is actually like not far off when he defines the atheist, when he defines God, but it's still highly linked to theological tradition, and that's the problem. Is he doesn't see the truth in that theological tradition, and but he's not defining God like really just very, very specifically, and not, he's expanding, he's including in that definition specificities that are not necessary to define God. They also are relevant to God in a specific context, but they're not defining. And if you have to include those things and you don't have that context that's very specific, that you need in order to understand those like specificities that you've added to the definition, you just can't. You just destroyed your any possibility of you actually like seeing the truth of this this being. Okay. God is sentient. He is someone.
David, good to see you. Tell me everything that you know about the Polynesian deity Lono, L-O-N-O.
I don't know anything about the Polynesian deity Lono.
So you're rejecting something without knowledge of what you're rejecting.
I'm not rejecting it. No more than I'm
Do
rejecting
you believe in
anything
Lono?
that I don't know anything
Do you
about.
believe in Lono?
I
Do you
fail to
believe
see
that
the
he is a
relevance of
deity
that.
that exists in the world, exists in the universe, that exists in the existence of everything? Do you believe that Lono
I'll
is
answer
a
that
being?
question once you answer my question, which is, do I reject everything that I'm ignorant of? Because that's your presupposition that undergirds your argument, and unless you can prove that that's valid, then there's no point.
My question is quite simple.
Yeah, but that doesn't mean it's formulated accurately.
Do you believe that Lono exists? Yes or no?
I'm not going to answer that question for the reasons I just described. You already insisted that if I reject something, that if I'm ignorant of something, I reject it. Do you think that everyone in the world has to know everything simultaneously for that to be valid and true?
I think for your
Answer that
argument
question.
to be true, in order for it to be true that we atheists don't understand what we're rejecting, then you need to also apply that to yourself and to Christians and to Muslims and to any other person on this earth, where if you don't understand what you're rejecting the belief in, then you can't reject the belief in it. That's the implication of your
I didn't
claim.
say that I rejected the belief in Lono. I
It's
said I didn't
Lono.
know who Lono was. I didn't say anything about rejecting.
That's because I've asked you several times and you haven't, but let me get to my even greater point. You're saying atheists don't understand what religion is or what God is in order to be able to reject it fully or completely. We have someone over here who studied it in their own way. I've studied religion. I have a degree in religious studies.
Guys, people who study physics and get degrees in physics are just as lost as these people who are studying religious studies without believing it. That's like, don't think that this is restricted to just the field of religious studies within, the halls of secular academia. This confusion extends to every single subject that is currently being taught. It's wild, and good luck convincing everyone that none of them really understand the subject. Not everybody, but the majority of people that study any subject, that the majority of them do not actually understand the subject that they are studying. But that's of course the case because they're not contending with the subject. In reality, they're memorizing books and things and statements that were made by people who actually did contend with the ideas, but they had context in their contention that you don't have in school. But so the point is, notice this guy is doing exactly the same thing that I said before. It's all about religion. He's doing a couple things, but he says, "Oh, your claim is that atheists don't understand God or religion." No, atheist is a term that is wrong, but we use practically to mean somebody who disbelieves or thinks that God does not exist, which means like you do not believe existence is a singular sentient being that we all are created within and by. That's it. Like it's nothing about religion. And so when he says, "Oh, do you believe in Lona, the I don't know, a Philippine like deity, or whatever part of the world it was from. I don't even remember. And Jordan Peterson's like, I don't know. I don't know what Lona is. How could I answer that? And he's like, just answer the question. It's a very simple question. And Jordan Peterson's like, yeah, but that doesn't mean it's formulated properly. This is very critical. If you have a question that you ask and it is not from a perspective of being built on proper definitions, built out of words that are properly defined, then knowing whether or not a word is properly defined by you it requires some understanding of the subject, which is what it makes this kind of tricky. And but he's basically saying that if you don't know what Lona is, then you don't have a belief about what Lona is, and therefore that is atheism. But that's not true. Atheism is a lack of belief, and it's not a lack of belief, it's a disbelief, it's a rejection. And if anybody is wondering what I fidget with, because I'm constantly just fidgeting with everything, this is a pen and this is like a little pocket knife. It's a very like unique knife. It won like art knife of the year when it came out. It's called the CRKT. It's made by CRKT Snaplock, made by Van Hoy. It's brilliant design. It's like absolutely a work of genius, and unique, totally unique, very cool. And it's fun to fidget with until you catch your finger in there and stab yourself, which I've done many times. Even on stream before, and I've always tried to hide it. But this guy, though, I don't know if he came into this hoping to ask that question and expecting Jordan Peterson to say, no, I don't believe in Lona. And he just didn't know how to respond. So he just continued with his plan when he said, I don't know, instead of I don't. Everybody has an opinion about the nature of fundamental reality that they exist within. Do you believe it's a someone? That your world is a someone who, has their own goals that you are within? Or do you believe that it's not someone and you can bend reality to your will versus your reality will bend to the will of God because it is God? It's like if I move my arm to go pick up this glass of water, every cell in my body, their entire world just bent to my will. They don't have a choice in it. They can say, I don't believe in God, or I don't believe in humans. I don't believe in Tyler, the human, but their world is going to bend if I want it to. My arm is not going to bend if they want it to. So same thing with us and God. You're within God, cells are within you. It's the same thing. But this guy, again, he's misdefining atheism at this point, and he's also tying the definition of judging whether or not atheists understand what they claim to reject based on religion. Again, this is not God. Everything, he's like, well, then how can you, and this is true because he says, well, what do you say to all the Muslims out there that say that their religion is true and that they understand the truth, but then there's Jews out there that they believe that they understand the truth and that they reject Islam? That's actually not true by theistic Jews and theistic Muslims. They don't reject each other at all. We acknowledge each other. The Quran acknowledges the truth of the scripture of Christianity and Judaism. It literally states that part of the doctrine of Islam is that like the Jews were chosen by God to be the people of the book and bring the Torah to the world, and that the Torah is God's blueprint of creation essentially, and they just think that they failed personally and they're in their like goal to do this. The reality is many many people do fail. We all fail constantly, but they don't reject the scriptures, the Jewish scriptures. They don't reject, or the core assertions. They don't claim to believe in a different God. They don't even claim to believe in a different Messiah to Christians. They believe Jesus is the Messiah in Islam. They don't call him God, but that's because they're defining God differently than Christians do. This is if you actually know people who are truly not religious, but they are theists who are part of a theological tradition. Those people, they don't think that they're the only ones with the truth, and the other people, they don't get it at all. At all. That's why in Islam, it's everybody says, within the Abrahamic traditions, that they all come from Abraham. They all descend from Abraham. It's like we have a shared story. Okay, they don't. This is very different from what this guy actually understands. And he says, I have a degree in religious studies, or I'm pursuing a degree in religious studies. I have my own way of understanding this stuff. Can you really understand it if you don't think that it's true? If it actually turns out to be true? No. If you don't think it's true, then don't go on shows and try and argue that you understand something. Just quietly assume that you think that you get it and move on with your life, and study something that you think is true. But this guy, again, getting his degree in religious studies, what the heck is going on? I could never I couldn't even do my math homework, guys. I wouldn't even do my math homework in high school. I failed math algebra multiple times because I refused to do my math homework. And because I just didn't think that it was right that I had to go to school all day and then come home, and that was supposed to be my time now. That's like, why would I? So I definitely can't understand why anybody would devote their graduate level studies, which cost an enormous amount of money and take up an enormous amount of time, which is your prime time. Like this is the best time to be making a family, to be getting married, to be, having children and starting a career. But instead you're devoting it all of that time and effort into studying something that you think is fake. I do not get it. I actually think I do, but I don't think that it makes actual sense. If you understand what's happening, you wouldn't do it. But I think that what's happening is that we just created such an artificial context in academia that people don't care if it's true at this point. It's like, well, I can get a good grade, and I can, I kind of am interested in the story, and so why not? I'm being rewarded for memorizing this stuff. I'm getting A's, and maybe somebody will pay me to be the chaplain, the atheist or anti-theistic chaplain at MIT. They literally have an atheist chaplain at MIT. That's how crazy this has gotten. Like, don't be a chaplain if you're an atheist, or if you don't believe, if you are an anti-theist, really. But if you claim to be an atheist, why are you a chaplain? Just call yourself a counselor. Like that's, or a therapist or something. Like, but a chaplain, let's look up chaplain definition. A member of the clergy, attached to a private chapel, institution, ship, branch of the armed forces, etc. Yeah. What is the role of a chaplain? As the spiritual care specialists on an IDT, they perform an independent assessment of a patient and family's spiritual needs, as well as their cultural and religious factors, which may be an influence in medical decision-making. Okay, so this is like within the medical system. But it's about spirit. And which really means like it's about like God, because this is like a spiritual context. That doesn't mean you alone as your feelings alone. It means like you are existent within another being with its own will, and this is what's this is the context of the clergy. it's funny. I remember Eric Weinstein once was talking to us on this physics Discord at like 2:00 in the morning years ago, and he was like talking about how they tried to silence and suppress his theory of geometric unity, and I said to him, I was like, he said something about, or someone said something about how our universities have taken on the role of like the church at this point, and because they make moral claims, there's a moral culture. It's an immoral culture, but it is a culture with a moral claim, with moral claims in universities. And he was like, yeah, they tried to suppress it. And I was like, well, what was the blasphemy that you committed then? And he answered it. And I won't get into it right now, but like it was, what do you think would be blasphemy to an anti-theistic institution? But this is, we have people calling themselves members of the clergy. We have people dedicating their lives to studying religion, to religious studies, and none of them believe in God, and none of them believe in religion, or in these theological traditions that they're studying. What the heck are they doing? Does this sound like people who actually understand what they're doing at all? I used to have this quote on my Twitter that said, if you chase a headless chicken, then you are a headless chicken. And it just means like if you follow somebody who doesn't know where they're going and doesn't know what they're doing, then what are you doing? And you're just as lost. And these people are chasing headless chickens. The headless chicken to them is a theological tradition, Christianity, Islam, Judaism, God, anything that you think is nonsense. And yet you're devoting your life or your scholastic efforts and your focus to following it and to chasing it and to trying to apparently understand it, even though you think it's all nonsense. That is called chasing a headless chicken. You admit it that what you're chasing is a headless chicken, and then you choose to chase it anyways. That is terribly misguided. So, I don't know. This guy can say whatever he wants. How can you say that we don't understand what we're talking about? Because I have a degree in religious studies. Maybe because you have a degree in religious studies and you think it's nonsense.
Specialty in Christianity and Mediterranean traditions. And further than that, beyond me, Pew Research studies suggest that atheists and agnostics actually know more about religion and about religious stories, the foundational principles, than believers.
That's because they're more religious than they think they are.
Okay,
They're concerned with deep matters, and one of the defining characteristics of someone who's oriented in a religious direction is that they're concerned with deep matters.
Okay. This is where both of them descend into like nonsense a little bit. And again, respect both of them for getting anybody who engaged on this. Honestly, I respect, and even if I disagree with them, and but it takes bravery to do this. You go on a Jubilee, and you end up being like the hit of a big Jubilee episode. Your life will change, and you will get countless death threats and also countless requests for more podcasts and things like that. Your entire life can change, and it's not all good. So it takes bravery. But you can lose your job very easily by going on Jubilee. But this, when Jordan Peterson says here, he's like, they're more religious than they think. This is why I hate the term religion. What does it even mean at that point? It doesn't mean anything if it doesn't mean somebody who is claims to be a member of a scriptural theological tradition. That is somebody who is religious, if religious means anything. If it doesn't just mean that, if it isn't defined by that, then it doesn't mean anything other than you believe in dogma. Well, what he's using it as is how atheists think religious people are, which is somebody who believes in dogma without evidence. They just are told things and they just accept it, and they have no evidence for it, and they regurgitate it. That's what they think religious people do. A lot of them do. And I say that as a theist. A lot of them don't. Just because some of them do doesn't mean there's no truth in Scripture. It just means like they are shallow or lazy or have not, they're missing something in their understanding. But people are just like that in every single community and in every single philosophical belief system of any kind, secularism, materialism, whatever you want to call all these isms. If you want to call them religions, you can, but what's the point? I don't like when he says, oh, they're more religious than they think. But I understand what he's getting at. He's just basically saying that they believe in things that they don't understand as well. But then he tries to, I don't want to say what he tries to do, but he then states they're concerned with deep matters. And anybody concerned with deep matters basically is kind of religious, is kind of what he's implying, or at least logically what he just said kind of will imply. And that means nothing. They're concerned with deep matters has nothing to do with being religious. There are plenty of people who are like, what is a deep matter? I don't even know. Okay, let's go to the chat. To clarify, I love, if you didn't know, find God while being religious. It's evident that you didn't know what God you were denying. Yes, the sort of argumentative games are meh. I'm tired of that. I don't get why people are even having that discussion. Religion is the thing that affects the modern world. Why wouldn't you want to study it even without the supernatural grounding? Because it's defined by the supernatural grounding. Do you understand? Like, you cannot otherwise just study history and say, I'm a historian. I'm studying history. Don't say I'm studying religion, because you're not. You're not studying that. A theological tradition, what we call religion, is defined by a divinely inspired, divinely communicated, directly communicated book, usually, that comes through a human being from God. And that is the belief of where that book comes from. That's the context of it. And you might not think that that's true, that happened, but then you don't believe in the context of it at all. So no, you wouldn't want to study it, actually. What's the point? You can study history and say, yeah, I know the history of the Catholic Church. That's not the same thing as studying religion or studying God. It's definitely not the same thing as studying God. And so atheists, or anti-theists really, it's not that they reject. You can reject Christianity and be a theist, or reject Judaism and be a theist, or reject Islam and be a theist. And you just might, if those are true traditions, you just might not have a correct understanding of those traditions, but you might have a correct understanding of God, or at least correct enough to be a theist, a true theist. Understanding God is not the same thing as memorizing the different aspects of a religion. I went to this talk. It was put on by a friend of mine named Addie, who does the Ekkolapto YouTube channel. Check it out. I think it's linked below. And he does a bunch of events, and he had one with Scott Aronson, the mathematician, at here in Austin, and at the university. And I went to it, and he wrote on the the whole talk was about, what does it mean to understand a number? And he's like, okay, he looked it up on this phone. He's like, looked up what the highest known prime number is currently. And he wrote it on the board. And then he was like, what does it mean to understand that number, to know that number? He's like, what if I claimed to know the next highest prime number? And I just knew that whatever is the next highest prime number is the prime number that comes after this number, and the one that's the current highest known prime number. that's how what it means to like understand things. Like, do I understand a Ferrari? I can tell you a lot of things about a Ferrari, but different Ferraris. Ferrari Enzo is one of my favorite cars. I can tell you that it's named after the founder of the company Ferrari. I can tell you how fast it goes. I can tell you how much it costs. I can tell you what colors it came in. I can tell you all kinds of things about it. I could tell you different aspects of how the controls work that it has. But I could not build an engine. I couldn't take apart the engine of a Ferrari and put it back together. I couldn't fix it. I would not know the first thing about how to even change the oil on a Ferrari. Do I understand a Ferrari? Do I know what that Ferrari is? This is not even a good question, because when basically and that was Scott Aronson's point, is like, what is it when we say, what does it mean to know a number? We have to have a goal to knowing that number, and I'm teaching my daughter counting right now, and she's now counting to like, she got to 12 today. She was like 1, 2, 3, 5. It's funny. She just like she just says the first like syllable of the beginning of the number, but she is starting to understand what it means for there to be two things. Not just that 2 is the sound that comes after 1 in the sequence that you say, because I'll show her a book and I'll be like, how many stars are in the picture book? 1, 2. She does that now. It's like, wow, you're starting to understand what it means for there to be 2. But could you understand what it means for there to be 2 things, but not know the symbol for 2? Yes. Do you know whether or not 2 is prime or not? Do you need to know that in order to understand to have an understanding of the number? Like, it's all about goals. And the thing is that the goal of a theological tradition is rooted in its origin, which is at least allegedly divinely inspired, coming from God. If you don't believe that it came from God, then you cannot actually understand. You cannot. It doesn't make sense to even try and understand it. Like within its own context, you just can understand it within the context of an outside context, which is just called history. I have a friend. He knows every single character in the not Lord of the Rings, what is it? The Dragons, Game of Thrones book series. He's obsessed with the book series and the show, but the book series. He knows every single story. There's so much world building in that, and lore, and he knows it all. And it's okay to do that for enjoyment, because if you know it's fake, but like you can say I enjoy it, but like, what does it mean to understand the Lord of the Rings if you think it's fake? You can actually do that because it claims to be fake. But if it claims to be real and truly coming from God, and you claim that you don't think that it is, you can't understand it within its own context. You can't understand any of it. It's all built on the assumption that this came from God. You can't understand it. Any of it. It does, other than its historical context. And that has nothing to do with being an atheist or a theist, like, at all. You don't even need to believe in a scriptural tradition to be a theist. We're very confused about these things, and it's far simpler than we think. It's just like, you need to realize what the definition of God is first, and even then you can claim whether or not you believe in that definition or not, or whether or not you think that definition is true. But until that you have that, then you can't claim to understand religion, you can't claim to be an atheist, or you couldn't claim to be a theist. There are people there. It always amazes me now that I am a theist that people will say, I used to believe in God and now I just don't. I went to college and I learned about evolution, and now I can't believe I was so stupid. And I used to be like, yeah, well, I mean, I guess it's all you knew. And this was when I was self-described atheist. It's like, well, I mean, if it's all you knew, then it's all you knew. But the thing is that, which is obviously that's true. But now that I'm a theist, and I'm not a theist because I just am accepting what others told me. In fact, I was raised in a secular context, and it was very painful to become a theist in this secular context. When your whole family doesn't believe in God, you think that you have realized that God is inevitable. That's not something that you don't do. That's not because you accepted somebody else's opinion that you just can't. It's because you see truth in it and you can't ignore it. And but I when I became a theist at first, I was like, I don't understand how you could be a theist and then not be a theist. And what the reality is that they didn't understand God properly, even though they claimed to believe in God. Otherwise, you would never, ever abandon your belief. You might abandon your belief in his existence or his love for you or whatever. You might think, why have you forsaken me? But you would never be like, yeah, I don't actually believe in him anymore. It doesn't make sense. That doesn't make sense. It's not if you had a correct understanding of the logic of why God seems to be an inevitability. And yeah, it's just interesting to realize, like, this isn't about religious people being right or atheists being wrong. It's about making sure that we have the correct definitions to start building from. We understand what it means to actually entertain the opposite of our default assumption and consider it. And then also understand what is the difference between what does it mean to understand something versus what does it mean to know someone. Like, to be a theist is to know someone. It's to know God. It's not to understand this thing. It's to know that this thing is someone that you know. And he knows you. Like, that's to be a theist. To be a religious person is to, I guess, follow one of these scriptural traditions. Maybe you believe in God and maybe you don't. You know, it's funny. I have, I did this when I was 13. Before my bar mitzvah, I had a meeting with my rabbi. He was a Reform rabbi, so very not very observant. Not all like taking this very seriously and and incorporating it into every aspect of how we live our lives. It's more like a church on Sundays type of a relationship with religion. And he was like, what do you think about God? And I was like, I don't believe in God. He's like, why not? And I said, because it says that the world was created by God in 6 days, and I know that there's fossils that are way older than that. And I used my limited understanding of a translation of a text to define God in that. If God did not create the world in 6 literal days, then he cannot exist. By the way, think about the logic of that. The sun doesn't even exist yet. So if a day is defined by the sun going around, like the earth going around the sun once and it rising and setting one time, but the sun and the earth doesn't exist yet, then it doesn't even make sense to believe that by day they mean like a literal 24-hour like rotation around the sun. That's not how they're defining day. And the original Hebrew, it means period. Yom is the Hebrew word. It means period. God created the world in 6 periods. But I didn't know that. And so I dismissed God. But then I went and I have this, I went to this other rabbi after I became a theist, and he was the local Chabad, like Hasidic, ultra-Orthodox rabbi near where I lived. And I had this epiphany and I came to realize God. I went to him, and it was like he was one of the first people that I spoke to about this. I couldn't even talk about this subject with anybody for like years without crying. I and I didn't have very few people to talk to because all my friends were secular, and all my family was secular. So I go to this like Hasidic rabbi, and I was able to talk to him about this in a way that I've never been able to speak to anybody about this stuff before. I was like, I understood this man. He understood me in this context, even though I didn't dress like him and live like him yet, at least. I mean, I don't dress like a Chabad guy, but I keep the Sabbath Friday nights. But he said to me something very fascinating. He said, I was an atheist until I was in my 20s. And I was like, what? You are Hasidic and you decided to be a rabbi as a Hasidic, like ultra-Orthodox rabbi, and to stay in that community wearing the same clothes as everybody and not just doing whatever you want, disbelieving in the truth of, in the existence of God. And I was like, why would you even do that? And he said, because I looked at my life around me and my life that was planned before me, and I liked what, I wanted a wife, I wanted a family, I wanted a job, I wanted to be around my family, I wanted to be around my friends, and that meant like being part of the community. And so I didn't understand what it even meant to believe in God. I just thought I believed that these were good, traditions that I had, to dress this way, to eat this, to marry this person, to go to school and study, Torah. And then I realized I did not know God, and then I came to know God, and I was like shocked. And that just goes to show you can be literally an ultra-Orthodox, observant rabbi, like as observant as you can get, beard, like hat, everything, and choose to be a rabbi and think that you know what you're talking about, and then one day realize you didn't even understand God. And you could disbelieve in God, whatever your conception was at the time, and choose that path. This guy's degree in religious studies doesn't mean jack, guys.
In fact, it's virtually definitional.
Right, but they also have to identify with a religious tradition and accept the foundational stories that go along
Well,
with
that would mean more that they're sectarian than that they're religious. And most people, for example, in the United States, deny that they're religious but accept that they're spiritual.
Yeah, Jordan Peterson just got rid of the definition of religion completely. It doesn't even make sense to have it as a word. That's why I don't like it. So this is very important. Remember when Jordan Peterson, in the clip where he's talking with Kurt about my claim about how to look for God honestly, and he said, well, you could ask, is God real? Or you could say, is real God? He's like, it's the same question. My claim is that it is not the same question at all. One of them doesn't really have an answer, but you could say that it's like inevitably true, no matter what the answer is, no matter what the definitions of any of the words involved are, because what is real, and you could just call it God, apparently. But if the other question is God real? It means like whether or not it's the definition of God that matters, and in determining the answer to that question. Whereas is real God, the definition of real is what matters, and it doesn't even matter the definition of God. And that's very different, because the definition of real is assumed to be true no matter what. So their directionality matters, and how logic unfolds. Dominoes only fall one way. You can't have dominoes hitting each other on both, the one in front of it and the one behind it at the same time. It doesn't work that way. You touch one domino and it hits the next and hits the next, and it goes in a line. It's true with all logic and language as well. And so this is where Jordan Peterson makes this mistake again, same mistake in a different context. He does this quite a bit, actually.
The prophet Elijah defined God in the Old Testament as the voice of conscience within.
Okay.
That's a definition.
So you're saying by that definition of God, I see this kind of goes back to what I'm saying initially.
I'm
where-
not defining it. Elijah
Okay,
defined
so
it.
as Elijah defines
It's
God.
defined that way in Jonah, too.
Okay, so as
Cardinal Newman also
got
defined
it.
it that way.
As I'm sure you know many people who define it that way, and it's impressive. You're a very knowledgeable person.
I'm not trying to be impressive. I'm just pointing out to you how God is defined in the Old
Okay.
Testament.
All right. So to respond to that, I do think there are lots of interesting ways to define God, and that goes back to my
Then,
kind of
then
opening
how do we
statement.
specify what we're arguing about?
We use context clues, or we again, it goes back to my example of the
I'm
Mona Lisa.
defining God as conscience.
Okay, so that's interesting, but then you're kind of expanding the meaning of
No,
God.
I'm not. That's how it's defined in the Old Testament.
Okay,
in
so-
Elijah and in Jonah.
Sure. So
Yeah.
whoever. So
It's not whoever.
okay.
Elijah is one of the
Okay,
major
all right,
Old Testament
all right,
prophets.
all
Right?
right.
He's equal in stature to Moses.
Okay.
Right.
First of all, Jordan Peterson is kind of using an appeal to authority here, but like, it doesn't matter that it's Elijah is defining it that way. That, like, the point is that I think Jordan Peterson is wrong about what's going on. What is actually probably happening, and I would bet a lot on this, even though without knowing exactly what he is, like the words, and being able to read the original Hebrew, is when he says Elijah defines God as the voice of conscience within. It's not really that the voice of conscience is within is God. It's that God isn't. That is God, but God isn't just the voice of conscience within. When you feel like a conscience, your conscience within is telling you like this is not the right thing to do. Is that God? Yes, probably. But is that the definition of God? No, it's not. But that is God. So you could say, yes, that is God. Okay. But you can't just say, basically what I'm getting at is, if you said, what is the voice of conscience within you? Oh, it's God. You can say that. But you can't say, what is God? Oh, it's the voice of conscience within you. See, the difference is like the order has been switched. One of them is entirely contextualizing. The statement isn't contextualized within itself. The other one is not, actually. And so, because God is not just the voice of conscience within, it's also sentient existence. It's someone that it's the original creator of everyone else. It's the most powerful being. It's the all-containing being. It's the eternal being. But God is not defined as, you wouldn't say, is God eternal? Yes, you could say that, but you wouldn't say, is eternal God? It's like, that's not defining of God at all. There's that, what is that which is eternal? It's that which is eternal, I guess, whatever that may be. And yeah, we could call it God, but what's the point? It doesn't tell us anything. Language is constructive. And if you're not building on one, brick on top of the other, then you're not conveying meaning. You're not constructing meaning. And so what Jordan Peterson is basically doing is he's trying to build a house starting with the roof and saying that if you can build it from the foundation up, then you can build it from the roof down. That's not true. And so, yeah, you cannot say, well, God is defined as the voice of conscience within. Don't you believe that you have a voice of conscience within you? And so, yes, I do. Okay, well, then now you do believe in God. No, not at all. Not at all. That does not make sense. And at that point, there's no point in the term God. Just say, do you believe that you have a conscience? Do you feel a conscience within you telling you what is right and wrong sometimes? Yes. Okay. Then you have that. That doesn't tell us any, that's not related to God necessarily. Like, I mean, it is if you already assume that it's within the context of God, but like that morality and what is right and wrong is within the context of God. But the point is that you can say the voice of conscience within you is God, but you cannot say God is defined by being the voice of conscience within you. But you could say the voice of conscience within you is defined by being God. Like, that is God speaking to you. And that's enough to know what it is. But to say God, that voice speaking to you inside, that's God, that's not enough to know what God is at all. Doesn't tell you anything about his relationship with you in any context other than communication, which is not the only context. Creation is another context. Will, power, these are all aspects of our relationship with God. And to understand God, you have to know he's someone, just like you are someone. He has his own will, you have your own will, and that your will is subject to his because you're within him. He is the world that you are within, but he's not just a rock like the earth. He has goals. And that's God. Like, that is enough of a definition of God to actually understand God. You don't even need to know anything in Scripture if you know that God is the initial, eternal, all-encompassing someone that is existence itself. Then you understand God. But if you know that God is the voice of conscience within, and that there's a Trinitarian structure to our relationship with him, and that there's that he conveyed the Torah to Moses, and that Moses wrote the last book, but God wrote the first four. And I'm not mocking any of this. Like, I think that most of this is true, but the thing is like, knowing all of these things without knowing that God is someone that is the someone that we're all subject to, and that we were all created by, and are within, and who has their own will that will be done, like, then you don't understand God. It's very important. You can know everything within Catholicism, Catholic dogma. You can memorize every commentary and every word of every commentary and every letter within the King James Bible, and you don't have to understand God at all. Not necessarily. You could literally choose to be a priest even, and not understand God at all. God is simple to understand, not difficult, not mysterious, ever present. You're a fish trying to look for water. It's not mysterious when you know what to look for. It's everywhere. But if you're not looking for the right thing, and you're looking around at specific places instead of holistically, then and internally, then you're not going to see it. Okay. So it's a very big mistake that Peterson makes, like a lot, not constantly, but just know directionality it's critical to the coherence and constructivity of meaning and logic.
Based on the culture that within the society that they live.
Okay,
in.
fine.
So with
I think
women's
that
suffrage
could
as well
happen.
is a very similar topic in the Bible. There are denominations in Christianity, such as Pentecostal movement, which do bolster women to be pastors, right? Which I think that's a great thing to do. But most like to disregard
Where do you
women.
think the idea that human beings were sufficiently equal to all vote and not be slaves came from?
Humans.
Yeah, but so did the idea of slavery.
So did the
that's
idea of God.
Fine, but what's your
Yes.
point? Like, you're not making an argument. You're just saying all thoughts come from humans,
Yes.
regardless of the thoughts.
It's not driven by a higher power. It's driven on our experiences
Define
as
higher.
humans, which is what is best for all people.
Is it driven by conscience?
It could be. Which conscious is also something that has evolved over time, and I think that's
What's
something
the
that
other-
does evolve within morality.
How can you claim that it's not driven by a higher power based on just that term alone, higher power? What the heck is a higher power? Like, and when people say that, I just want to be like electricity, like magnetism. Like, then you don't even know what that means. You have no definition if you say a higher power. I hate that term. It has to be someone, or else it's not God. And when you say, I believe in a higher power, okay, do you know what that means to even say that? It just, really what people mean is, I believe that there's more to the universe than I understand, and that there's things going on beyond my understanding. No shit. And I say that as somebody who thinks that they deduced like the logic of God's mathematical constraints of creation, at least some of them. Like I believe in that there's more than out there that I don't understand, and there will always be that. So it's not relevant to say. It's an assumption that is kind of obviously inevitable. But what Jordan Peterson is getting at here is this guy is saying, like, how can you say that God exists and that you believe in God, but also, Scripture seems to endorse slavery, and we don't believe in slavery, basically. And the thing is again, he's defining God by his interpretation of Scripture, and also his own personal beliefs about what he wishes would be a good thing and what isn't. When he says, there are certain Christian groups that do allow female pastors, and by the way, I will never go to a church or synagogue that has a female rabbi or pastor. And it's not because I'm judgmental of them at all. My wife is one of the most brilliant and capable and people I've ever met, and is the most important person to me in the world. I trust her more than I trust anyone else. And if I need anything, like needed someone to come through for me, her. If I trust somebody to take care of my daughter, her. Like, I'm not somebody who does not revere women. But I understand women and I understand men too, and that we are different and that we must be different, or else there's no purpose to any of us. If all of us are meant to be able to do the same things, then there's no point to you existing, and there's no point to me existing. There's no point to women anymore. Women are supposed to do everything that men are supposed to do, and men are supposed to do everything that women are supposed to do. There is no point to either one. You basically, in an attempt to defend them, you have basically claimed that both of them are useless, and that is just due to ignorance. Like, he just does not. He doesn't even want to entertain the possibility that there's a reason for type of gendered roles. And of course there's gendered roles. There's gendered roles in nature. Like, what do men do versus males do but versus females in everything from snakes to birds to ants to lions? Like, are there gender roles in lions? Yes. Are there gender roles in ants? Yes. Are there gender roles in birds? Yes. Are there gender roles in snakes? Yes. And some of these different species have different roles for their genders. But they're different roles. Like, in some of them, like there are species of lizards where the males don't defend a territory. They don't defend anybody. Their purpose is to spread their genes as far as possible, and not have a territory, not defend anyone or within it. Then there are lizards that their job is to have a territory and defend it, and defend any females that are within it and any babies that are within that territory, and not to spread his genes beyond that, but just to defend anyone who are his genes, or helping spread his genes within it. It's like, these are different roles, but they are specific and they're different from the females. And so, sometimes you got to back up and you got to look at nature and humble yourself a little bit and be like, okay, yeah, sure, maybe this is something that I would want. Given my current understanding is that women should be able to be pastors. Or that women should be able to do we should erase gendered roles, basically. But then maybe that's not such a possible idea even. Like, maybe it's, if you erase that, you erase everybody's meaning and any hope of a constructive relationship with anyone. Because why have a relationship with anybody if you don't need them. If you don't need them, then you just want them. And if you just want them, then it's about you, it's not about them. It's not about, oh, they need me, so I want to be there for them because they need me. It's my responsibility. Versus, no, I want that person. I enjoy being around that person and doing this with this person. It's not at all about them. They don't need me. I don't need them. I want them. It can't be like about them wanting you, because that doesn't make sense. That doesn't motivate anybody's actions. But if you want them, then you're just objectifying them and you don't even realize it. It's odd, like subversive, weird, like reversal of what is the intention in trying to defend like women. He has erased their value. There's just, this is part of understanding anything as well. Is like, you have to sometimes humble yourself and be like, you know what? I have my preferences about what I would want the world to be like. My wife says this. I study martial arts and I shoot and I carry a gun. I have a concealed carry license, and I'm always carrying, and I do that because I want to defend people and myself. I think it's my responsibility as a man, and it's noble for women to do it if they choose, but it's not their responsibility, but it's mine. I do believe that, and every man really believes that. That's like, even you could say I don't believe you when shit gets going. Like, I think we assume that is the role of men. Unfortunately, it's not acted out very often these days, not proactively at least. But this my wife will says something repeatedly to me, and she's not the only one, but it's a lot of women say this and be like, I just wish guns didn't exist. It's like, yeah, well, I wish violence didn't exist, or like, people who are doing evil actions. I wish those things didn't exist, but they do. So we have to work within the fact that that's what's real. We can't just be like, well, what I want is that there to be no reason for violence. And I wish that, by the way, like, I wish I had no reason to be armed. Like, I wish it was completely unnecessary. And thankfully, I've never had to draw my gun on anybody. But I have had to get into physical fights with people before to protect women. In college, I got into 2 fights. One of them was to protect a man who was getting his head bashed in against concrete. And I choked him out unconscious because I was unarmed. The other one, I'm drunk. I was harassing and groping some women and grabbing them, and I got him away from them by convincing him to follow me. And then he tried to swing at my face, and I ducked and swung at his face, and I knocked him out, and he had a seizure, actually. So, like, thankfully, I didn't need to be armed then, but I was armed. It was just not with, a firearm, but it was my arms. And so, like, we can want what we want, but then what we have to contend with reality. We have to humble ourselves and recognize that. And it's our responsibility to recognize that reality as best we can before it bites us in the ass. Like, you should train a little bit of fighting if you're a guy, so that when you need to help out and break up a fight or defend some women or something, you can. But or you have a better chance of it, at least. If you're just gonna if you don't think it's a responsibility, you're not going to get any more. You're not going to seek proficiency in it, and then that's not good for anybody. Like, especially you. Like, you don't want to be unprepared when life happens. And that means, like, embracing responsibilities. And that means embracing roles. There's no responsibilities without roles. One of my, like, biggest recommendations to anybody who gets married is, if you do not alternate in who does chores. Don't ever be like, today you do the dishes, tomorrow I do the dishes, and we switch off. You will get divorced if you do that. What you do is you say, my job, my responsibility is the dishes. In my house, that's my responsibility. I do the dishes. I take care of our dogs. I do the dishes. My wife prepares meals for our family. That's her responsibility. It's her responsibility to clean up other things in the house, the floors and stuff like that. That's her responsibility. It's not mine. It's her responsibility to put clothes away after, I put my laundry in the washing machine and then in the dryer, and then it gets done. She puts my clothes away. But I put all her dishes away. And we have different responsibilities. You can pick those responsibilities. You can be like, I'm better at doing the dishes, so I'm going to do the dishes. And that's how it should be. It should be based on who's better at what. And, it doesn't have to be the women's job to put clothes away or the man's job to do the dishes. It could be either one, but make sure they're different. That's the key. And so to partnership of any kind, to meaning of any kind, to relationships that are actually meaningful instead of just based on, your own enjoyment, your own selfish enjoyment. But he doesn't get that. And that's due to pride. Like a lack of understanding of he doesn't perceive his own pride, but he has it. We all can have it. I'm not judging him. But if you think that what you want is how it should be, not what you think is true is how it is, but what you want is how it should be, that's pride. And he's wrong, I will say. Like, there's a reason why women are not supposed to be pastors or rabbis or priests. It's like, why is that consistent in every single theological tradition? Every single one, the moral leaders of the moral institutions are traditionally male. Maybe it's because that's their talent compared to women. Why is it that women are traditionally caregivers, nurses, and teachers and babysitters and anything that has to do with taking care of people and even animals? Like, why? Maybe because it's like their natural talent. Neither one of that is belittling. Like, both of those are extreme. Is there anything more important than taking care of others? Like, probably not. Yeah, just, you gotta check yourself sometimes. This guy is
Okay, I don't
wrong.
understand the point that you're making.
My point is that God influenced slavery. People looked at the Bible and went, this is moral because God says so, just like women's suffrage
There's lots
and
of
just like homosexuality.
all human societies were slave owning, so you
Yes.
can't blame that on the Bible.
If humanity decided...
Oh wait, address that first.
What, about
All
slavery?
human societies were slavers, so you can't blame that on the Bible.
Well, you can say it bolstered it.
Well, not if you look at the broad sweep of history, because it was the Protestant Christians
Based
in
on
the
their
UK.
interpretation of the Bible,
It was the Protestant
which
Christians.
evolves over time.
Pause there. You've been voted out by the majority.
All right. Well, it was great talking with you, sir.
He's literally not listening to Jordan Peterson at all. Obviously, he's not even letting him get a word in because he knows what he believes and he doesn't care what Jordan Peterson has to say, which is like, why are you even there? Like, we're wasting everybody's time. And I'm not blaming him or judging him, just stating, like, we should check ourselves a little bit. Like, what is your goal in this exchange? Is it to understand? No? Then don't engage in the exchange. If it's just to beat him and convince him and show the world why he's wrong and show him why he's wrong and why I'm right, instead of like wanting to know the truth, then you're not engaging in an honest exchange. Like, you're not engaging with someone, you're using that person as an object. And that's just waste. That doesn't honor your own efforts either. But he just, I get it, but it's important to just not be like that. Assume there's a reason why. It's like marriage. Why is marriage found in every single culture in the world that ever became a civilization? I don't know. Probably because there's a true purpose to it that is unavoidable. Why is it that there's no marriage norms in any society that has ever existed in which it's more normal for one woman to have multiple husbands. You know, we have, usually it's one man, one wife, but sometimes it's one man, multiple wives. But it's never, ever one woman and multiple husbands, ever. It's never existed. Maybe it's because it can't. There's something about that relationship that is impossible to construct to construct from. You should assume that, because otherwise it would exist, right? Like, if something is possible, then it would exist at some point. By the way, there is 0 species on Earth in which there is gender exists, like sex, different sexes, and they do not have different roles. There's not a single species on Earth in which they have the same roles, and they're still male and female. Not one. In any species in which there is no male roles and female roles that are specific, there's no male and female at all. It's just like a worm that's asexual and just reproduces continuously. You know, I have there's geckos and that are now all female because the males died out because the females can produce like viable offspring on their own, called mourning geckos. Are found in like Hawaii, and they're found everywhere. And the males all died out because they weren't needed anymore to make babies, and they weren't valuable to any of the protecting of babies or of the females. So they're just gone. Like, they're completely gone because they were meaningless. That which isn't necessary does not persist. You don't want to erase people's necessity. But when he says, like, oh, you know, God, these people who are Christians or Muslims or whatever, they or Jews, they had slaves and they believed in God. So therefore, and it says in the Bible something about treating your slaves decently, and that it's taken as an endorsement of slavery. And the thing is that you have to recognize is that the context of Scripture is a human context, and that doesn't mean that God wants us to have slaves. It means that humans will have slaves, and God is saying, if you are controlling somebody completely, like you own them, essentially. You don't really own them, but like you think you own them, then you should treat them well. That's not an endorsement of slavery. It's an endorsement of treating people well, even when they are your subjects. That's all it is. But, you know, but Jordan Peterson's question is, or statement of like, every single group of people on Earth had slaves. And that's true of anti-theistic cultures as well. Look at the gulags in Soviet Union. That's slave labor. They had slaves that were people who were imprisoned and used for slave labor. Like, they were anti-theists. So you can't use God, just because somebody uses God to justify something does not mean that it's God's will. And people do that all the time. It's called blasphemy. Blasphemy means like when you say to use God's name in vain, it doesn't just mean saying like, God damn it, when you stub your toe. It means like it doesn't just mean that. It also does mean that, because that diminishes your reverence for the name God or the title God. But more like serious case of blasphemy than that, blasphemy on a different level, is to attribute your will to being God's will. It's like, I like this, so therefore, if I like it, then God must like it. Otherwise, why would he make me like it? And anybody with that mentality does not have a coherent worldview, because I guarantee you that there's countless instances in which they don't believe that people, just because people believe or like something means that they think it's the right thing to do. Like, serial killers like killing people? Like, does that mean it's the right thing to do? No, definitely not. Because the voice of conscience within you tells you it's not. Meaning and okay. Let's go to the chat and then we're gonna go to the next clip. I'm gonna try and step on it because I'm trying to keep these to 3 hours or less. And we're at what right now, guys? What are we at? 2 hours, 10 minutes. We have 50 minutes left. I feel bad for them. Atheists, they think they're smart. It's a little funny. They're intelligent. They just are building from the wrong starting perspective. They are assuming a falsity and trying to build on it. Like, you can. Whatever they say we can't know, I tell them, hey, don't rope me into the same little circle here. Maybe you might not be able to know, but you can't speak for me. Yeah, exactly. When they throw that claim out there saying that they can't know, I agree with them. And then say, yes, I agree. You don't, and I can't know. Okay. Yeah, this guy doesn't know what he's talking about. I get a degree in Christianity. Beard. I got a degree in Christianity. Okay. I believe you can do what I can do. It's just something I found. And you can do what I can't yet together. I call myself a carpenter. If you need me to say label. I don't know what you're saying. That's like believing art is not real. It's just human BS that is nonsense. But study art. Yeah, exactly. It's really odd. Like, you don't believe in what you are studying. It's like, it's like, it wouldn't make sense for you to say, I study Star Wars and I believe it's actually real. Like, Palpatine was a real person. He existed. He wasn't just a fictional character in a fictional story. Like, I believe he was actually real, and that Star Wars is actually just video recordings of what really happened. It's not actors. Like, if you believed that, then you would not understand Star Wars, because part of Star Wars is that we know that it's a fictional story. Like, it's not understood to be real. Scripture is not like that. Scripture is defined as being scripture by it being real. And so if you don't believe in it, then you can't understand it within its own claims. Like, you just can't. You can memorize the book and you can study the history of its institution, but that's not the same as understanding it. Like, you don't understand why people believe that it's real. And if you don't understand why people believe that it's real, which you would, if you did understand it, then you would believe that it was real. You can think that you understand it. You're like, oh, people just need comfort. Yeah, a lot of people just need comfort. You think that everybody who studies theology just needs comfort? You need to engage with more serious theists than that. Like, they're not. That's not theism. Belief in God is not only. It's not just for comfort. It is comforting sometimes, because it's like, God loves me, but it also means, like, God has his own will, and he has I have responsibilities and moral responsibilities, and that, like, I now, like, there's a judgment aspect of belief in God too that's not comforting. It's like, I can't just do whatever I want and get away with it. I won't get away with anything, actually. I will answer for every sin that I commit, and just, I pray that he has more mercy than I can imagine, which probably does, but still, you will still answer for every sin that you commit. Yeah. Gosh, Jubilee is funny. This next clip is so funny. Last week we talked about, like, how atheist is a bad term. Really, what we mean is an anti-theist, somebody who believes that God does not exist, or that existence is inanimate, fundamentally inanimate. There is no supreme someone that that is existence, that we're within. There is no one who intentionally created us. We were not intentionally created. That's that you don't believe in God. You're an anti-theist, but you call yourself an atheist. But then people say, I'm an agnostic. And what this means is we can't know anything about it, really. Like they'll say, I have no belief. I don't disbelieve, but I just have no belief. Or it means I don't believe that we can actually know anything. All of these things are actually just signs of somebody who doesn't want to state their beliefs around the people that they're around. It's just a sign of being cowardly. And anybody who claims to be an agnostic, I think, is actually being cowardly. They're not cowards, but they are being cowardly. They don't want to claim to not believe in God around theists, or there are people that claim to be theists around theists, but they're actually atheists. I have family members, even extended family, who told me that. They were like, don't ever tell my mom, but I don't believe in God. And like they've gone to church their whole life. And their mom has no idea that they don't believe. But in what? Really, he doesn't believe in Christianity. That's what in the Bible, that's what it is. It's not that he doesn't believe in God. He does not even know the definition of God. But that's cowardly. But then, and I love that person. So, but we can all be cowards sometimes, be cowardly sometimes. But if you're claiming to be an agnostic, it's like you just don't want to insult the theists that you're around, and you don't want to insult the atheists that you're around, and you don't want to say what you believe. And I think it's the worst claim that you can make. And then if you mean, it means we can't, by agnostic, I mean we can't know anything about what the truth of God. Then how do you even know that? Like that's a self-defeating statement right there. We can't know anything, but somehow I know that we can't know anything. Have you tried? It's just a sign of somebody who's being a coward, or being cowardly. Somebody who's being cowardly. But this brings me to my next clip.
Nice to meet you. I guess since you said morality and purpose cannot be found in science, it would just depend on like what you're referencing. If you're saying a description of your psychological preferences would be considered within science, sure, but I don't think that you have to say that it comes from science in order to be like an atheist. As an agnostic atheist, I don't know if God exists and I don't believe that God exists. And the only ones that I would really reject would be like the all-knowing, all-powerful, all-good, perfect notion of God that plenty of Christians just like prescribe themselves. So I guess
How is that relevant?
I don't know if God exists and I don't believe that it would be considered within science, sure.
Okay. Let's try and break that down.
But I don't think that you have to say that it comes from science in order to be like an atheist. As an agnostic atheist, I don't.
As an agnostic atheist, what the heck is an agnostic atheist? Somebody who doesn't believe in God, but somebody who believes we can't know anything about it? That's the most coherent definition I can think of, but it's still incoherent.
I don't know if God exists and I don't believe that God exists.
I don't know if God exists, and I don't believe that God exists.
Only ones that would really.
So yeah, saying I don't know, but I disbelieve.
Would be like the all-knowing, all-powerful, all-good, perfect notion of God that plenty of Christians just like prescribe themselves. So I guess
How is that relevant?
So, but the only one definition of God that I would reject is the all-knowing, all-good, all-powerful God that many Christians believe in. Okay. Again, like that's probably because he's judging things that he sees as immoral around him as being justified by a religious tradition that he doesn't understand, and so how can God be good? And so therefore, if God isn't good, then God doesn't exist because God is all powerful and all good. And it's like you're not defining God by God's nature and his by himself. Like you are defining God by an aspect of God. You can't define a Ferrari by its paint. Like does Ferrari have paint on it? Does it have four wheels? Yeah, but like it being a Ferrari is not defined by any one of these things necessarily. Like it's These are attributes that are present but are not defining.
You're basing a position of morality and purpose in some like notion of God that isn't the same type of notion of God that typical Christians would prescribe. Your notion of God is
What
not.
typical Christians?
Yeah, typically when I talk to Christians, they say that they believe in all-knowing.
About Cardinal Newman, who defined God as conscience. He was a major influence on all of Catholic social theory. How about that Christian?
Sure. So do you believe in the all-knowing, all-powerful, all-good notion of God?
What do you mean by believe?
Do you think it to be true?
That's the circular definition. What do you mean? He was a major influence on all of Catholic social.
I don't know if God exists, and I don't believe that God exists. And the only ones that I would really reject would be like the all-knowing, all-powerful, all-good, perfect notion of God that plenty of Christians just like prescribe themselves. So I guess
How is that relevant to this claim?
you're basing a position of morality and purpose in some like notion of God that isn't the same type of notion of God that typical Christians would prescribe. Your notion of God is
What typical Christians?
Yeah, typically when I talk to Christians, they say that they believe in
How
all-knowing.
about Cardinal Newman, who defined God as conscience? He was a major influence on all of Catholic social theory. How about that Christian?
Sure. So do you believe in the all-knowing, all-powerful, all-good notion of God? Do
What do you mean by believe?
you think it to be true?
That's the circular definition. What do you mean
How
when
is
you
that
say you
circular?
believe?
How is that circular?
Because you added no content to the answer by substituting the word true and believe.
I said you think it to be true.
All right. So if you believe something, you stake your life on it.
What do you mean by that?
You live for it and you die for it. That's what I mean by that. It isn't something that you say. It isn't something that's associated with logical consistency. It's not declarative. It's not propositional. It's not a figment of your imagination. It's the presupposition of your attention and your action. And you're either fragmented, in which case you worship multiple gods, or there's some unity at the bottom of it that makes you an unstoppable force.
Okay, well, first of all, you can't define God as conscience. Your conscience is God, but God is not just your conscience. God is way more than just your conscience. But yeah, God is also your conscience. So you can't define God as conscience. That is, if that's all that's necessary to define God, according to that guy who claims to be Christian that Jordan Peterson is referencing, who influenced so much of Catholic social theory or whatever, that guy's not a Christian. He's not even a theist necessarily, if that's all that's necessary to define God. I don't care what he claims to be. Like, he's not. If that's all the extent of his belief. Again, Elijah, he said, your conscience within you is God. Is that true? Yes. But is he saying God is your conscience within you? No. Probably not. Otherwise, I don't think he would be a prophet, because to be a prophet that believes God has a will beyond a single individual, or even beyond your own the feelings of every individual, is to be beyond just being a conscience to someone. Like, it's not just that. That doesn't make sense. And if that's Jordan Peterson's definition of God, that he thinks that is sufficient to define God, he's not a theist. But when he says things like this, he's like, what do you mean by believe? And everybody gets on it, it's like a meme at this point. What do you mean by believe? The problem with this is that when we talk about belief, we are putting it in the context usually of a theological tradition. It's like, do you believe in Christianity? People will say yes. A lot of people who call themselves Christian will say yes. It's like, do you believe that the things that are written in the Bible are the moral prescriptions are things that we should actually do? Because all of us fail to do them completely. And that's partially mainly because we don't want to. It's like in the New Testament, it seems very clear to me that women are supposed to cover their hair. What Christians do you know other than Mennonites, who nobody who's watching this associates with, because those people are Amish, basically. They don't watch YouTube videos very often. If you're watching this, you're not a Mennonite, most likely. And if you are, let me know in the chat. And if you're not a Mennonite, then you're a Christian, and then probably none of the women around you that claim to be Christian cover their hair. Do they believe in Christianity? It's not the right question. Do you believe in God? You can believe in God and also recognize that you failed, and you can even believe in the scriptures of Christianity, but you'd have to admit, I fail to live up to what is prescribed perfectly I mean, I would say that I believe in many moral prescriptions that I fail to live up to sometimes. And I know that when I don't, it's a failure. That's what it means to believe. It's like that's the right thing. And, but I mean, do I believe God exists? Yes. Do I believe you can do something that isn't in accordance with God's will and just believe that you're going to pay for it too? Like, to believe that you're going to pay for it is to believe in God. When he says to believe means you live for it and you die for it. I get what he's saying when he's saying like to believe. If you believe the sun is going to come up tomorrow, what does that mean? It's like I'm going to plan my day around it. I'm going to judge what, the time around it. I'm going to. I believe that it is a constraint that I have to contend with. That exists beyond me. And if you believe in God, then you believe that constraint is a someone. And if you believe in a specific theological tradition, then you really have to believe that it makes moral prescriptions in its scriptures, and you can choose to believe to follow them or not. But like, if you don't follow them, then you have to state that, why you have an alternative belief about what it means to follow them, or you have to just admit that you don't and admit that you're just not perfect, which is fine. But so this is why it's a bit tough. It's because like he says, what does it mean to believe in God? Jordan Peterson doesn't want to answer that. And part of it is because he has so much, it seems like he has so much reverence for God. But part of it is also because we're mixing up belief in religion or in a scriptural tradition, really, or even just the doctrine of a tradition with belief in God. And belief is really like you accept it and plan around it. You believe you will have to contend with it. It's different from understanding belief. But understanding should cause belief. If you understand something, you should believe in it. If you understand why something is true, then you do believe it. But you don't just believe it, you know it. It's different. It's a little bit different. Sometimes belief can include knowing, but it can also mean just accepting. It's like your teacher tells you something about Einstein's life. You don't know. You weren't there. You believe, I believe we went to the moon. I will say that. I believe we went to the moon. I don't know. I wasn't there. I can't say I know we went to the moon. And, I've memorized a lot of things. I'm an aerospace technology enthusiast. Like, I love fighter jets and rockets, and I study a lot of it. Not the physics of it so much, but like the history and the technology of it. But that doesn't mean I know we went to the moon. I believe we went to the moon, but I don't know. And this is just very important to understand, like, how we use these terms properly. And I understand Jordan Peterson he does realize that we're not necessarily using these things properly. These terms and these statements, we don't understand the statements that we're making. He sees that, and he's correct. But he's not helping make progress by broadening the definitions of things to be inevitably inclusive of everyone. It's like wanting women to be pastors. It's like, and to be protectors and soldiers, and men to be babysitters and nurses and breastfeeders. Like, it's like you just destroyed anybody's definition. So you can't even claim to believe in women anymore if you don't even believe that there's a specific definition. You can't claim to believe in men anymore if you don't believe that there's a specific definition. You can't claim to believe in God anymore if you expand the definition to be whatever it needs to be for everybody to be included. And I understand. I don't want to say I understand. I think he's trying to possibly get, people to reconsider what it means to have a relationship with God. And he's lacking the proper language to define God right now. And so what do? You just try and help people feel like it's more open than they thought. It's like, that's not enough. If you are saying something that's not true, it's actually more harmful. You're just swapping one lie for another. You're swapping their false belief for your now false belief that you're conveying to them, or your false statement that they're going to accept. You don't ever want people to accept what you say if what you say isn't specific and understood by them and true.
Okay, so you're saying that you don't believe something if you wouldn't die for it?
Not really, no.
Okay, so
How would you define belief? Something you say?
so I explain, I could believe it in the case this pen exists, but if someone like threatened my
It's like, this is again, it's like, what do you mean by that, to believe in something, just something you say? Some people, like, in some instances, a belief is just defined by what you say. Believing that this pen exists or whatever, like, means like I pick it up and I use it to write because I believe that it exists. I'm going to reach for it when I need a pen. But, you know, it's some of this stuff, when we're talking about a something, like, it's very much goal dependent upon how we understand whether or not something is some way, or whether or not we understand that we understand something some way. Just like what I talked about with Scott Aronson, what does it mean to know a number? I don't need to know all the digits of a number to know the next prime number that's high. I could just say, okay, this is currently the highest known prime number. I believe that the next one after that exists. And I know that whatever is that next one is the next prime number. Do I know that number? No, not necessarily, not enough. But, like, it's not even that. It's like you have no goal in getting that number. You know, like, to know a number is not it's not a statement that is complete absent context. It's not universally contextually complete, specifically contextually complete. And same thing with belief. It's like, do I believe the sun is going to rise tomorrow? Do you believe in the sun? It's like, do you believe in the sun? What do you mean by that? I believe it. There's a light in the sky that produces heat that seems to rise and set every day. Okay, does that mean I believe in the sun? Or it's just like, it depends on what your goal is. You can't do this without a goal. But belief in someone is different. There's really only two ways that you could believe in God and maintain and be definitionally coherent and say that I believe in God, and have multiple different ways of interpreting that. One of them is to say I believe in God means I believe in his existence. I believe he exists. The other one is to believe in God is I believe that he's going to be there for me. Like, I trust him. I believe in him. And that one presupposes the fact that he exists. So it just adds to the more narrow definition of to believe in God means I believe he exists. The other belief is I believe in God means I trust him. It's like, okay, but that means you also believe he exists. So you could choose either one of those two definitions, but those are the only two definitions for believe in God that can make sense. And honestly, either one of them will allow you to still maintain logical coherence. I tend to say, it just depends on where you're at, because I would say now I don't believe God exists. I know God exists. I believe in God's assistance. I have faith in God's assistance. I don't have faith in God's existence. I know God exists. I don't take it on faith. I assume I know it due to personal experiences and logical deduction. I have faith and believe in his assistance, which is his choice, actually. So, like, it's not something I can possibly know. It's something that's up to him. But I hope that he gives it to me, because if he's not with you, and and he is against you, then like you're screwed, and you're completely screwed at that point. If God's against you, you're screwed. So this is, people have different priorities, so there's multiple gods. Okay. Here he's again. What is the
Priority
definition of
in your
God?
life is going to be considered God.
This
That's correct.
this girl, by the way, this woman was the best person here, and he knows that Jordan Peterson knows that he picks her to be the last question and come back because she was the best. And the reason why is she wants to understand Jordan Peterson. She's not trying to convince him that she's right. She wants to understand why he says the things he says.
I'm trying to imagine a situation in which could there be that someone has a priority at their foundation that is different from someone else's?
Oh, definitely.
Right. So we can have different conceptions of God.
That's why we fight.
Right. So essentially, there's not one God, but there are multiple gods, and these gods exist in some realm of truth. Like it's true that this person has one God and it exists.
Yeah, probably better to think about it as multiple values, but that there's a hierarchy of values with something at the bottom.
Right. But at the
Or
bottom is
top.
God, and
That's a definition. Yeah.
Yeah. So at the bottom is God,
Yeah.
and there can be multiple people with different conceptions of God, and they're each valid in being called God. So there are multiple gods that exist.
It depends on what you mean by valid. So far, so good, but it depends on what you mean by valid, because I would say that some foundational conceptions don't play out when they're implemented. So if you put the wrong thing at the foundation, you end up in hell, for example.
This, by
That's
the
what
way,
happens in totalitarian states.
This is a conversation. This is not a debate. This is how it should be done.
Yeah.
So you're
So
saying
they're not all equal. Like all foundational
She's
principles are
asking
not equal,
questions.
even though they might be equally foundational, right?
So what makes one kind of foundational tenet like better than another one?
That's an excellent question. Iterability. Imagine that you play a game with someone and you're a kid, and it's fun.
Okay, we don't have time to get too into this, but what is important to say here, other than just she's doing a great job of just being honest and actually like she's gonna be the person that gains the most from this because of that. Even if she doesn't come away as defining herself as a theist, she will increase in her understanding, and they won't. If they're the people who are just trying to convince him of their perspective will not walk away having increased in their understanding. So she gained power. But the thing is that what happened prior to this clip is he had basically said that which is God, understood to be God, is that which is the highest value in our lives. And because they were talking about worship, it means to worship God. Don't have any gods before me. It means like do not worship anything that isn't me. And so now she's saying, okay, so if the people have different hierarchies of values, and some people think this is the most important thing, and some people think this is the most important thing, then they have two different gods, right? And this is why, again, directionality matters. You have to define for God first. God is defined by himself. He is someone. He is not defined by anything. He is someone. Just like you're not defined by anything. You are you. You're not just I'm a human. What's the definition of if you say it, to say what is the definition of God is like saying what is the definition of Tyler, of me. It's not like saying what is the definition of a human being. It's like saying what is the definition of a human being and that is Tyler, like a specific one. And so part of this definition is always going to be, someoneness of me. Like it's not going to be about the physical attributes and structures. It's going to be about the personal, coherent will of single person or single being that is part of the definition. It's someone, and this has failed, this conversation that they're having right now, because Jordan Peterson is not conveying that directionality matters in defining God. He's basically now saying you can define God by whatever people have as their God is whatever they view as the highest value. It's like no, that might be what they worship, and it's filling the place of what God is supposed to fill, but God is not defined by whether or not it's somebody else's highest value. God is defined by the fact that he is the most powerful being, and we are all encompassed within him, and his will be done. Like that's why God needs to be the highest value, is because his will be done. And if you aren't in alignment with if your will is not in alignment with his will, then you're going to lose. It's like the team has already been, we already know, it's like going to a Super Bowl and you know who's going to win already. And like the team that loses is going to die. They're not just going to like lose and go away like without a trophy. Like they're going to die. Which team do you want to be on? Like that's what it means to like not make sure you don't have any gods before God. It doesn't mean that God by definition is just whatever you value the most. And again, this is due to directionality. God is not defined by anything. He's someone. He exists and beyond and sovereign from the existence of anything else or anyone else. Okay. And for the question that everybody wants Jordan Peterson to answer, and he does not.
The principles of God, the principle of sacrifice, like you talk about, means that you are Christian. I don't see how you can get that from that interpretation and then, kind of justify it as the truth.
I don't think that the fact that you sacrifice is sufficient to make you Christian.
So can we repeat once again what you believe makes someone Christian?
There's many things, but one of the most fundamental is that you believe that the cosmos itself is founded on the principle of voluntary self-sacrifice. Best founded. Let me offer you a contrary example. So I could assume that power rules. And so that my assumption would be, if I can make you do it, I win. Right, and I can found a whole society on that, and that happens a lot, by the way. And that's also how societies tend to degenerate. And so that would be a society that was founded on the principle that you get to sacrifice and I don't have to. Right, now, the contrary to that would be something like, you give up voluntarily and with courage all the things you need to situate yourself properly in relationship to the future and other people. Right. So then there's a harmony. That's why I talked about harmony earlier.
So you navigate your life, right, in accordance kind of to this principle of self-sacrifice. Can I say it in that way?
Yes, you can definitely say it that way. That's exactly right. And navigate is the right term.
So someone does not have to have any awareness of Christ, of the story of Jesus, but let's say 60% of their actions, right, or more, whatever kind of metric you want to use, are in line with this self-sacrificial.
So the Christian thinkers of the Middle Ages dealt exactly with that problem when they were talking about the pre-Christian philosophers, for example. And they noted the similarity, let's say, between pre-Christian Greek thought and later Christian thought, and presumed that there were moral actors outside the Christian domain.
Right. So is that person Christian, though?
Well, to some degree, again, that's a matter of definition, because they wouldn't be proclaiming Christian propositions, but they're acting out the pattern. Right? So you imagine that full Christianity would involve a dozen things, and you can imagine someone who knows nothing of Christianity, say, acting out 8 of them.
Right.
So then they'd be 8/12 Christian or something like that.
Christian. Well, but to be like a full Christian, how can someone say I am Christian? Like I am Christian, not 8/12, but Christian.
Well, I hesitate to do that personally, because I think it's the kind of goal that you be very careful about proclaiming the technical.
But belief is not necessarily, to be mostly Christian, belief is not necessary. 8/12s or, right?
Well, it depends on what you mean by belief. See, because I would say that acting out the pattern is the deepest form of belief. Now, you could add to that what you say. So, maybe in the optimal situation.
Okay, major problems here. But also deep like truths when he says that the foundation of the universe is built upon the reality of voluntary self-sacrifice. That is so true. And what does it mean for God to self-sacrifice if God, and I'm talking about what Christians call the Father. I'm not talking about like Jesus. I'm talking about what does it mean for that being to self-sacrifice if God cannot not exist? If his existence is eternal, it's inevitable, it's unendable, then what does it mean to self-sacrifice? It means to give up a little bit of you. And what is you? It's a coherent line of will, or point of will even. It's like your will is what makes you you. If all of a sudden 2 seconds from now I had totally different desires and beliefs and know that were not connected at all to those that I had 2 minutes earlier in any way, and I'm not the same person anymore. Like coherence and continuity of will is part of the defining attribute of someoneness. Like if someone has motivations, like they have preferences, they have desires, something that has no desires and no goals and no preferences or anything is not someone. It's just something. Like this multi-tool has no will of its own. It's not someone. I have will. I'm someone. My dog has will. He doesn't want to come inside. And when I try and get his ass inside, he stays outside. He has will of his own. He's not a robot, and he's not purely a machine. He's also a machine. You're a machine, but you're not just a machine. You're not defined by being a machine. It's just you're also a machine. But you are someone with will of their own that is unique, and it is not able to just be changed by another at their will. You can't just flip a switch and make somebody want what you want. That's why we all have to figure out how to communicate and get along and understand each other. But so if God is fundamentally just pure, like, point of will, like the first point of will, the last point of will, the eternal will, all-encompassing will, willful being, willful structure, then what it means to self-sacrifice is to sacrifice some of your will, which means like to give up complete control, to allow for others to have free will, is what it means for God to self-sacrifice. And it's because this free will, when people say, well, if God's so good, then why is there evil in the world? Because people are ignorant sometimes, and sometimes selfish and not ignorant, and they make choices that are bad choices, and they do evil things. But that's not God's fault. If God were to get rid of all of that, and he was all good, and he got rid of completely everybody doing even the possibility of evil to be committed, he couldn't do that without getting rid of others. He would just completely erase everyone. And now he's the only one that exists, and he's not going to do anything. It's not even about like doing things good or bad at that point, because what is good and what is bad, what is moral and what is immoral, is about a relationship. There's no, if you're God and you're the only one who exists, like, well, you can't even do anything good and you can't do anything bad. There's nothing that you can even do, because fundamentally to do anything else that isn't being done would be to influence another that isn't already here, or that isn't there in that point, in that instance. And so, like, that's just a constraint of like sentience being fundamental. It's like means that some ones are fundamental, which means like if you want to have an impact, you means impacting other beings, other someones. That's why like saving an animal makes you feel good, but like saving I don't know, a remote control car from getting squished is not going to make you feel like a good person. It's just going to make you be like, wow, man, thankfully I don't have to buy a new one. It's expensive. But if you save a duck from being hit by a car, then you're like, I saved that duck. Like that duck is alive because it makes you feel good. Because you impacted someone. That duck is someone. The RC car is not. And so without free will, which means the allowance for evil, not the endorsement or the desire, but the allowance for individual choices in moral situations, you can't have multiplicity, meaning like there's no differentiation of beings, which means there's no meaning, because you can't impact anyone else. And you can't be impacted by anyone else. So you're just alone in the universe, and alone as the universe if you're God. That sounds meaningless, boring, and why would anybody want that? If you have will is the desire to do that which is not being done, essentially, or to do. You almost cannot exist in a static state, like, or you desire for a non-static state. So you're not just going to sit there. It's just like for the same reasons you wouldn't sit there. Like, why would you want to sit in solitary confinement for the rest of your life and never see another person, and never impact another person, never speak to another person, never help another person, and just sit there forever with no TV or smartphone, even no Facebook? Like, you're just sitting there, you and you alone. You don't even need food. That's what the world is without free will, without the possibility without the choice of to commit evil. and also the choice to do good. This whole thing of like the problem of evil. There's no problem of evil. It's a problem of people doing evil things because they're selfish and some of them are ignorant and some of them are selfish and some of them are both. All of us are actually all of these things sometimes. But like there is no, it's not people use the fact that there's bad things that happen in the world as an argument against God's existence. That doesn't make any sense. And God made the world as good as he could possibly make it. If God makes a wonderful world and it gives you everything that you need to succeed, to do what you're supposed to do, and you decide not to do the things that you're supposed to do, you can't blame it on God. You can't.
You act and what you imagine and what you say, they're
So,
the same, right? But
what does it mean to be a Christian? Christian is understood as defined by a specific theological tradition, which is based on the scriptures of the Old Testament and the New Testament combined. It's the Christian Bible. To believe it, to be a Christian. This is what's so like interesting about this is if you want to ask what does it mean to be a Christian, actually what you ask is you say what makes someone a Christian. You don't say what is Christianity. You say what makes somebody Christian. You can't be 8/12 Christian like Jordan Peterson says. People say this too about being Jewish. They'll be like, I'm half Jewish. You can't be half Jewish. You're either your mom is Jewish and that makes you Jewish, or you converted to Judaism and that makes you Jewish. Either one of those makes you Jewish. If neither one of those happens, you're not Jewish. And according to the laws of halachic law, Jewish law, there's no ambiguity. There's no halves. There's no 8/12. Same thing with Christianity, but Christianity is defined differently from being from Jewishness. Jewishness is about a community. Are you part of this community or not? That's what it means to be Jewish, is to be part of a community. If you're not Jewish, you're not part of the Jewish community. It doesn't mean following like all the scriptures of Judaism at all. And so what is Christianity? Christianity is different from whether or not you're part of a community. It's about what you believe. It is about a cornerstone belief that you build your worldview on. It's like, so what is that cornerstone belief? It is that Jesus is the Messiah and will return to basically like set the world right and rule humanity, and that we need him to do so, and that there's no fixing the world without that. Like that's what that means, and that being was that Jesus as the Christ, as the Messiah, that's God's will, that he is that. Like that's what that means. It's to follow the person, the words of the person of Jesus, because you believe he is that being that is ordained by God as the ruler of all of us eventually. And like it's a cornerstone belief that is framing and contextualizing of everything else that you believe. It doesn't mean you follow every prescription in the Bible. It can't, because nobody does that. But you can say, do you believe in the scriptures? It's like, if you pick and choose, then no, you don't. But you pick and choose what you believe in. But like, that's not even, to be a Christian is about Christ. It's not about even just scriptures. It's about Christ. That's what it means to be a Christian. You either believe that Jesus is the Christ, that is the divinely ordained ruler of humanity, that will, that is, God's will incarnate, basically, or you don't. and you're not a Christian. Like, is Jesus coming back to rule or not? Like, and do we need him? Like, or not necessarily. I don't know. Like, people get into, oh, it's personal savior. Let's just say humanity needs Jesus. Or if you're a Christian, you believe that. That's what it means. What does it mean to be a Muslim? It doesn't mean you do everything in Sharia law. It means you want to submit to God. You have the goal of living a life in submission to God. And sometimes you'll sin and fail, but like you have that goal of living that life. So if you look at Islam, it is a way of life. It is defined by a way of life, that is centered around like a goal of how to live. But it's based on, God's will. Christianity is defined by, to be a Christian is to believe that something specific is God's will. Someone specific is God's will, actually. And it's a cornerstone belief, fundamentally. To be Jewish which means Judaism, really, like at its most core aspect, definition is a community. And what's interesting is these are all things that we need. We all need community. We need a way of life, and we need a cornerstone foundational belief that to build on and to have faith in and to trust. These are not even this. This is like I said, this is a helicopter, a car, and a bicycle. Like, these are not 3 different SUVs that are competing models. Like, these are different things. And we'll talk more about them next week, but you can't use them to define God. And defining what a Christian is easy. Like, you can't be 8th, 12th Christian. You either are a Christian or you're not. And is there a little leeway in the definition? Do you have a choice in what the definition of it means to be a Christian? Yeah, but it's like 2 different definitions. But it's like very similar definitions. It's like, do you believe Jesus is God incarnate, or do you believe he is the Messiah? And still, essentially, like, he is God's will. I don't know what it even matters from a practical standpoint, but I mean, you could say maybe to be a Christian means to believe in the scriptures of the Bible, but like, that's what is. I mean, I guess that would make you Christian too, I guess. But like, if you believe that, then you also believe that Jesus is the Messiah and God's will. So it's not that you don't have that much leeway. Like, there's a little bit of degrees, there's 2 degrees of freedom that you have, but like, that's it. You can't just be like, well, there's lots of things that define being Christian. No, Christ, believing that Jesus is the Christ, specifically that he is. It is God's will that Jesus is going to be the head of the assembly of humanity, like, and that we need that. That is like the belief. That is being a Christian. It's not complicated. We've made it complicated because we're so freaking focused on like the least important things. Like, people I will engage with other theists that I really respect, and they'll be like, oh, like, you got to believe in the Trinity. You got to believe in, this. The Catholic Church is the true church. The Eastern Orthodox Church is the true church. It's like, you can't get lost in those weeds, or else you're no different than like the people who are obsessing over the tiniest little detail of the law and not the spirit of the law, which means like the intention, which means like God. When people are like, when they say in the Bible, oh, do you believe that Jesus was like basically stating that people are obsessed with the letter of the law but not the spirit of the law? it's not that you don't need it, but now you have basically like Christian culture, and I say this as somebody who is involved in this culture, and who is Jewish and involved in that culture separately. Now there's no reverence at all for the letter of the law in Christian community at all. There's no reverence for it. You can see that because Christian community acts the same way, other than Mennonites, as secular people. They just know that certain things are wrong, but like they don't even look to see what they should do. They're just aware of what they shouldn't. That's not enough. You need to know what you should do, not just what you shouldn't. But and then you have people who are like, obsessed with what is exactly written in the letter of the law, but they don't care about the why. So like one of the things that there's a Jewish community, which is Chabad, which I really think is wonderful in many ways, but the women in that community wear a wig on their head. It's called a sheitel. And so they cover their hair with a wig that looks like real hair. And so technically, because that's prescribed in the Bible, it's like women should cover their hair. It's written in the Christian Bible too, even more than it's written in the Hebrew Bible. Just no, Christians don't care about it. But Jews in this community will cover their hair with fake hair. Be like, well, I'm applying, I'm technically following the letter of the law. But the thing is that this law came from someone. And you can't actually have context to that law without understanding that it is the will of it is the law because God has a specific will, a desire that is why we are supposed to do this. And when you get rid of that, it's like, well, if I can just wear a wig that looks like real hair, then technically I'm following the law. And if you get rid of the need for the spirit of the law, aka like the intentionality behind it, God's purpose for this law, then you just don't follow the law at all. You just ignore it. You're like, well, he loves me anyways. It's like, yeah, he does. But like, if you want to love him, like you should think about what his intentions are, not just like be like, oh, well, he still loves me. It's like a kid when a parent says, don't do this or do that. Make sure you eat your vegetables. The kid's like, I'm not going to do it because my parents will love me anyways. It's like, yeah, but don't you want to love your parents? Like, do what they want. So you can't understand, like, have a holistic understanding of this stuff without understanding that it's within the it's contextualized within the intentions of God. And that those prescriptions are like for a reason. Like, you're not supposed to abandon them. I think that people in Judaism and in Christianity lost the plot. And it's just interesting they lost it in different ways. You need both things. Like, you can't get rid of it. Either one. You can't say I honor the spirit of the law, but not the letter. You can't do that. And you cannot say I honor the law, I respect the law, but not be aware of like the intentionality and have reverence for the intentionality behind it. God says cover your hair. Oh, I'm going to cover my hair and make it look like I'm not. No, maybe it's supposed to be covered and it's supposed to look like it's covered. Like, maybe there's a reason. It's just everything with God has to do with the context of someone. And otherwise it's not God. I'm getting into the weeds and we're going to wrap it up in a minute. This is not how you do this, though. But I understand why Peterson, why people get frustrated with Peterson. But look at this is not how you deal with it.
Niche, but your original
I added the hierarchy part at the beginning.
Are you
just
familiar?
didn't understand it.
Are you familiar with the Immaculate Conception?
Why is that relevant?
Because you go to a Catholic church, I'm sure you've attended recently. You're interested in Catholicism, aren't you?
Sure.
All right. Are you familiar with their doctrines?
Somewhat.
Okay. You're
Their
familiar.
doctrines are
How
very
do they
deep.
regard Mary?
Why are you asking me that?
Because you're a Christian.
You say that. I haven't claimed that.
Oh, what is this? Is this Christians versus atheists?
I don't know.
You don't know where you are right now.
Don't be a smartass.
Well,
and I mean,
either you're a
'cause I
Christian
won't
or you're
talk
not.
to you if you're a smartass.
Oh, either you're a Christian or you're not. Which one is it?
I could be either of them, but I don't have to tell you.
You don't have to tell me. I was under the impression I was invited to talk to a Christian. Am I not talking to a Christian?
No, you were invited to.
I think everyone should look at the title of the YouTube channel. You're probably in the wrong YouTube video,
You're really quite something. You are.
aren't I? But you're really quite nothing, right? You're not a Christian.
Okay, I'm done with him.
Okay. People are frustrated with Jordan Peterson because he's claiming to be able to explain Christianity to some degree, but it doesn't seem like he actually understands what it means to be Christian, to be quite honest. And I say that, like, he would have a definition that includes people and excludes people, not has people be 8/12 Christian. And by the way, anybody can become a Muslim, anybody can become Christian, and anybody can become Jewish, but you are either Jewish or you're not. You are either Christian or you're not, and you are either Muslim or you're not. And there is no 8/12 any of this. And if you're going to go out there and talk about these issues, like, he has to, like, I understand why he's not claiming to be Christian, because honestly, he doesn't have a definition that he is confident in, that would, you know, that he's comfortable putting out into the world. And, you know, I get that. He shouldn't put it out. He should not say, I'm Christian. Jordan Peterson should not say that. He doesn't know what it means. And that's very obvious at this point, because you cannot be 8/12 Christian. But I understand why he is saying this. It's because, like, you know, it's funny when I have people around me who will say, like, I'm starting, you know, I believe in a Christian like society, in a Christian government, I guess, like in a Christian state. But I look at them and I'm like, look at how they act, and not just what they're doing that's wrong, but like what they're not doing that we're supposed to be doing. You know, it says in the Bible that you're not supposed to make Christmas trees, and Christians are like, let's do that. It says in the Bible, do not cut down a tree and decorate it with, you know, metal like gold and silver, and you know, cut it down and bring it into your house and erect it and decorate it with gold and silver. It says that, like, explicitly in the Bible. And Christians were like, let's do it. And I'm not critiquing them specifically. I can poke fun at the Jews and the Muslims, and I love I believe in these theological traditions. And I love people who are Jews and Christians and Muslims, and I would include myself probably in almost all of them, actually, probably all of them. If you go based on the textbook definition of what is a Christian, what is a Jew, and what is a Muslim, I would fall into all of them. Unless if Christian means belief that Jesus is the Messiah. If you say it's God, like, then we just differ in how we're defining God at that point. It's not even about whether or not I'm Christian. It's about, like, you and I don't agree on what the definition of God is. Yeah, like, so I can poke fun at all of them out of a place of honest, like, love, and critique them in an honest way. And it is important to make sure that your critique is honest, like, which means, like, honest means, like, you have the best intentions in your critique for them, like, not for, oh, if I take down that person, the world will be a better place. It's like, no, how do I help that person if I can? So that's why honest criticism is always kind. There's no cruel criticism that is honest. This guy, though, if you're to watch this, it's just funny. Like, look at his eyes. He is only looking at, and no matter what the frame is, his goal is to beat him. He's focused on his goal. This is his goal, not the truth. But then look at her. Watch this. And I know this because I was trying to get screenshots.
Belief is not necessarily to be most.
She's constantly looking away.
812s or like
She's
Well, it depends what you mean by
gazing.
beliefs, because I would say that acting out the pattern,
She's
or that
watch
God is
this.
resurrected.
fundamental issue is the action rather than the stated belief.
But he also says
She's gazing into the abyss because she's searching for the truth. She's looking beyond her own self, and she's looking beyond Jordan Peterson because he's not the goal. She's looking at the goal. The goal is truth. And it's not her own will, and it's not his beating him. It's the truth. And you can see that even in her eyes, like where she's looking.
you know, two
People who are thinking are look out because you're looking for the truth. People who are fighting
And sacrifice for.
look
So
perfectly at their
you get
opponent.
that description of worship.
Yes.
So you would say Catholics and other people that revere Mary, like the Eastern Orthodox tradition, worship Mary.
Well, they might not put her in the highest.
But you would
place.
put it that way.
No.
They're talking about worship. But okay. There's so much to this. We'll go a bit late.
Yeah, so
I'll go to the chat actually right now, and then we'll see where we're at. Please hit the like button if you find this interesting. Yeah, this guy doesn't know what he's talking about. Or believe it's a scam. It's like believing art is not real. I've had no income in 6 months and never suffered a day. That's great. That's wonderful. Just saying because I found been let down, not yet always the way I thought, but always better. Love you all. Love. I don't want to say I love you. Love is not a feeling. Love is an action. And I think that me doing this live stream is an act of love. It is. But the way that we use the term "I love you," I don't actually think is like. I think it's not correct. You can feel loved when somebody chooses to love you by actions. It has nothing to do with how you feel. Whether you love somebody has nothing to do with how you feel about them. In my vows to my wife, I say, and you can watch my wedding and know that I'm telling the truth. I live streamed it to YouTube. You can literally search it in my videos. And in my vows, I say to my wife, I promise to love you even when I don't like you. It's not about feeling. And not about how you feel about another person. It's about what you do for them.
To the question, do you think that God is by his very essence perfect?
You'll have to provide more.
Sure, just like maximally great and all like the
think it's
great
a
making
definition.
qualities.
Sure,
Yeah,
by
like
definition.
flawless. Yeah. So,
Okay,
so,
so
does a
wait a
flawless
sec,
thing
wait a
change?
sec.
Does a flawless thing reveal like more and better information over time? Or would a flawless thing say, here's what's good, here's the absolute good thing to do at all circumstances in time?
Well, we know some of that.
Wait,
Tell
so
the truth. That's one.
that's totally fine, but
No,
presumably...
no. You don't get to
That's
skate over
because
that, which that's totally
it's
fine.
a straw man of my position. It's a straw man of the argument. So
Wait,
the argument
no,
is
wait,
that
wait a
God-
sec. You
Well, I'm
said
already waiting a
find
second.
one maxim that's transcendent across situations.
I didn't
and
say any
just
of
did.
those words. I'm not sure what
Okay,
conversation you're a
rephrase.
part of.
Don't be a smartass.
I'm sorry.
Seriously, I mean it. If we're going to have a serious conversation, conduct yourself properly.
Okay.
Okay. Rephrase your question so that because I must have missed it. I tried to answer it.
So in my
By the
mind,
way, good for Jordan Peterson and good for this guy for how he reacted, and good for Jordan Peterson for setting him straight, because like he was starting to engage not in a dishonest exchange where it's like, I don't know which conversation you're having. It's just there's no point to that other than a dig. It's not about, there's no goal to it other than to win, or to appear to win, which isn't actually winning. But he responded well to Jordan's like setting him straight, and you got to give him credit for that.
I guess by my lights, a perfect being doesn't change. A perfect being, if they're maximally good, maximally moral,
Does our understanding of the perfect being change?
our understanding might, but
Okay, how do we
presumably what the perfect
distinguish? How do we
being is
distinguish?
revealing.
Well, I agree. How do we distinguish between that though at the human level?
How do
So
we distinguish between whether...
between our transforming understanding of perfection and perfection itself?
Between
right?
our
we can only,
unders-
yeah, well, we
That's actually brilliant. How do you, if God is a perfect being and you're not, then how can you possibly, like, if God knows more than you and is wiser than you and is aware of more than you and is more powerful than you and then how can you possibly make the claim that you understand that what it means to be, I don't even want to say perfect, but how can you can't judge God as not, if God's better than you in everything, that and all of what he knows and all of his actions are better than yours, I guess, or they're more consistently informed, more morally motivated. Like you and your understanding of him changes over time. Like you can't, like, I don't know how to put this. I've never thought about what Jordan Peterson said there, but there's something brilliant about it. But I don't know how practical it is. It's just kind of like, the result is, I'm not perfect, so who am I to judge God? That's really like what the lesson is from Jordan Peterson's statement. But I want to say something even more like important, is about what it means to be a perfect being. A being is not a static thing. When he says a perfect thing does not change, no, we're not talking about a thing. We're talking about a being. A being is some thing that exists, but it's something that's animated. And because it's someone living, essentially. Like a being, to be is to exist, and being is like a verb almost. It changes. Like to exist, existing is like, a being is something that is existing, but it's someone, and it's something that's constantly dynamic, but also specific. It exists specifically, and it exists in a dynamic state. Because it's an information system. That someone is an information system. You're never not moving. Like your mind is processing, is moving always. You are feeling constantly, is really what metaphysically, like what it means to move constantly, is like you're constantly feeling, which means like you're constantly being impacted. This is the being that we're talking. This is what it means to be a being. So God is that. And what does it mean to be perfect? Meaning to be always good. It means to make the best decision given the information that you have at the time. So, for instance, in my work, I had a contract with a prominent podcaster a couple of years ago, or show host, talk show host, and they were no longer making. It was no longer profitable given what they were asking for price-wise for this agreement that we had, this business agreement. And so we decided to cancel our relationship, like our professional, our contract, and or not renew it at least, because it didn't make sense, and we would have lost money if I continued to the contract, given what we were getting for what we were paying. And given what they were asking, did not make sense anymore. After that, they went to a competitor of ours, and they got a contract with them. And then they started a new show, okay, that didn't exist at all, and it wasn't even in the planning while they were working with us. But they started this after they started this new show after they started a new partnership with this other competitor of ours. And my boss and me, and we're just started to kick ourselves. And it's like, because then they started being very profitable, this person. I'm trying not to give too many details. And I kicked myself for it. And I was like, man, I wish we kept that person. And my boss was like, yeah, it's a shame. Like you canceled their contract. But the question is, did I make the right decision? Yes, I did. I can only make if I made a decision based on information that didn't exist, basically, like you can't really do that logically, but if I made the decision not based on only on the information that I have, and all the information that I have, then it wouldn't be the right decision. And so, yeah, in hindsight, it's like it looks like I should have kept that, renewed that contract. But in reality, no, I shouldn't have. What would a perfect being do in that situation? That's living, that has to go about, interacting and taking actions, given the information that's available at the time, has to make the best decision that's possible, the right decision that they can, given the information that they have. As we interact, and as existence, or not existence, but as creation is constructed and created, God gets more information, just like you get more information. And as God creates more, there's more to know. But he knows everything always. But he's always creating more, so he's always learning more. And it's this weird thing that it's different from us, because we can never know everything, because we're just a slice of existence, and he is all of existence. So he knows everything. As soon as he does something, he knows about it. He has a complete picture always. But that doesn't mean the picture doesn't change. That doesn't mean he doesn't add to the picture. It just means he sees the whole picture at once. And we can only see a little part of the picture. So it's different for us. So you can be all-knowing and also ever-growing in your wisdom. And you can always make the right decision given the information that you have, and also make a different decision in a different context down the line that seems like a similar context, but it's not it's not the same context, because information that you have going into it is different. It's like, if I was going to renew with that the contract with that person, and I knew that they were going to come out with a new show, then maybe that would have changed my decision. But I didn't. They didn't even know that. It wasn't part of the plan. Did I make the wrong decision in canceling the contract? No. And this is true of God too. God can change his mind. But it's not even that he's changing his mind, it's that the context is changing, and it's changing how he responds. And it's a different context, different action. Anybody who says, "Oh, perfect being is static, it never needs to change." What? A perfect being has the right intentions. That's what I'm saying. But that doesn't mean that they don't ever change their decisions or their actions. They're constantly taking actions. So how can they not? We're constantly taking actions. How could God not constantly also be taking actions? How could God possibly be this static thing? That's when you don't think about God as someone. Is when you get lost like that. Because you don't try and think about it as from the perspective of God. You're looking at what it means to be perfect from your perspective. It's like a perfect square is perfect. Okay? You're not a square. You are someone. God is not a square. God is someone. What does it mean to act perfectly if you are someone? He's not asking that. He's saying, what does it mean to be a perfect square that never needs to be fixed? No. If God is perfect, it means, what does it mean to have the right intentions and always make the best decision in the circumstances that are the current circumstances? That's all it means. It's a very different picture. It explains a lot about God in the Bible. It's like God grows. God gets wiser. God gets kinder. God gets more understanding. Because it seems, or at least he seems to be, but that's because he is growing, and he is increasing his wisdom. But he always understands everything in the current circumstances, in the current moment. In any moment, he understands everything, and in any moment, he has the correct goal. Like, he has a good goal. We have to assume that because it will be done. Like, and he made us. Like, you wouldn't make us if we weren't a goal. Like, if he didn't care about us. So you have to assume his goal is good.
Presumably a perfect being
Yeah.
A perfect being would be revealing all of these aspects all the time, especially if God's outside of time. I don't know how a God who's outside of time
how does
is
something-
revealing different things at different times. That just seems like incoherent to me.
Imagine something that's perfect.
Sure.
And complete.
Sure.
Okay, and it's
Again, when he says, how can a God that's outside of time be revealing things at different moments? Because you're in time, dude. God might be beyond time, but beyond the perception of time. You're not. And he doesn't know what time is, so like, but it's tough. I'd have to give the context of what time actually is and where it comes from. It comes from our relationship. It's just causality beyond you, and you're not all of existence. So there is causality beyond you. So you're gonna experience things changing around you. That's called time. That's the leads to the perception of the passing of time. It's change that you don't choose and don't cause. God is existence, and so it's not God. It's God. What does that mean for him to be outside of time? It doesn't mean he's outside of change. It just means he's changing, and there's nothing that's outside of him that's changing. There's things inside of him that's changing, not outside. And so it's a different view of time. It's not that he's outside of change. That's due to the will of others. He's within change. He has to contend with change that's due to the will of others, but it happens within him, not outside him. He's not subject to it at all. Like, he allows for it, whereas we're subject to it. Like, we don't have a choice. We don't allow changes to happen beyond us. We just have no choice, and we have to just contend with them. God allows for us to change within him. This guy, again, he's like he says an all-knowing God negates the logic of free will. No, you don't. Like, that doesn't make any sense at all. Will isn't about all-knowing. Will is about allowing. Freedom of will means like you have will that you control and that others cannot. It means like you choose your own goals and desires. That doesn't mean that they can't restrict you, but like, nobody, if you're in prison and you want to get out of prison, you don't want to be in prison, your will is to be free. Nobody can change that. Like, that's your will. They can keep you locked in there, but they can't make you want to be there, like by like flipping a switch. If they could, then it doesn't. If there's just the logic breaks down, then there's no will at all. Like, will is not. It's internal motivation, not external motivation. And I don't understand what that has anything to do with God being all-knowing at all.
Hold on. At the point in time when God is literally the one who created us, he could have created us in a way where we would always be receptive to these principles, where we don't have to go across like a learning curve where, maybe we'll understand like thousands of years in the future, maybe we'll do it. Oh, also, if you believe in an all-knowing God, then free will is impossible, because
Wait a sec. Let's not go to that
because
yet.
you threw free will into the mix.
Well, that was the answer to your question.
Yeah, and
you said, why wouldn't God?
incoherent.
Well,
It's
1,000
contradictory.
years of deep thinking philosophers would disagree with you.
Yeah,
but haven't
and
you?
1,000 years of, or at least like last 50 years of philosophers would disagree with you. These analytic philosophers, people like Graham Oppie, make arguments.
What has been done in the last 50 years? We've started destroying society. That's what we've done. Granted, neither one of those, like the fact that other people believe something is not enough of a reason to trust it, no matter what, whether those people are just, happen to exist in the era of destruction of society or the construction of society. But like, still, like, they're just not arguing about what is important.
About the incompatibility of omniscience and free will, that if God created this world, if he chose this world instead of that world, then he makes it causally inevitable every single action that you were going to make. If he made a world where we were just electrons in love, then none of this would have happened. But by making us in this world, knowing exactly what's going to happen,
you can't. He doesn't know what electrons are. He doesn't know what love is, and he doesn't realize that God actually had no choice in the laws of this world, really, given his goal. Like, he chose to create it, but he did not choose how. Actually, its logic means that there's only a specific way in which he can create a meaningful world, And part of that means he must include, if you want to have meaning for yourself, if you're God, you want your life, your existence to mean something, because otherwise what's the point of being an eternal being if you don't matter at all and you're just alone? Then you have to allow for differentiation of people. You have to allow people to have their own will. That means they make their own choices sometimes. Like, you can't be electrons in love. There's no love if there's only like electrons. And you don't even know what causes the perception of an electron. You need multiplicity to cause the perception of an electron. There isn't electrons. There's like the perception of a point. But regardless, like, there's so much context that they're just missing, and they think that they have it, and they don't. And it would take hours for me to give all the context necessary to understand why we can't be just electrons in love. But you can just watch my other videos that I've done. I can't go much later tonight. Let's see. Okay. You guys, if you're here still, you're the real ones.
To accept Christian values precisely, or Christian morality.
It means to aim up as hard as you can, no matter what happens to you.
Okay.
Okay.
So
that is, I'm not going to say it's false, but it is a useless definition. It's so vague. It doesn't mean anything. What does it even mean to aim up?
That I think that that's a very broad definition of what Christian
Yeah, but it'll
morality
come
is.
in handy at some point in your life.
Right. But I think that many different like disciplines and theologies.
Well, you asked for a truncated answer. I mean, there's other ways of representing.
Aiming up and with all your might is definitely can come in handy if you understand what that would mean in the relationship with God. But like, he asked what it means to be Christian. He didn't ask to accept Christian morality. He didn't ask what does it mean to, like, whatever would be generate that answer. What does it mean to strive for the ultimate? Yes, I don't know what the question would be that would get that answer, but it's not a good answer.
Situation, but I wanted to give you something that was kind of foundational, brief.
Yeah, that makes sense.
It doesn't mean it's, exhaustive.
Yeah.
I could say that you
it's not about being exhaustive. It's about being sufficient, and it's not sufficient. It's not defining. It's not specific. It needs to be specific in order to be defining, and it needs to be defining in order to be correct. And so you can say, well, that's just, that's not an exhaustive definition, but it is true. It's like, I don't know.
to believe that Christ is God and he died for your sins. Right? But that's, in a very difficult way to understand, that's the same claim.
Yeah. If there are other theologies and disciplines that have similar types of values, how then is that definition mean? Like, wouldn't those also be Christian values under your definition?
That's a good question. I spent a lot of time studying different religious systems from all over the world and found multiple interesting layers of concordance. Right. So, for example, in ancient Egypt, their god Horus, who was the reviving god of the totalitarian state, he was the god of attention. Right, and the Jews hypothetically came out of Egypt, and there was crosstalk between Egyptian and Jewish foundational morality, and then that bled into.
It's just I see what he's getting at, and it's just not. We don't have the time right now. But
I mean, human beings all over the world have come up with moral systems that any other religious system, and I think that that's part of the reason that it defeated.
The point is that what does it mean to believe? I'll tell you exactly what it means to believe in the Christian moral prescriptions. It means, because to be a Christian means you have a cornerstone belief about Jesus being the Christ and the will of God incarnate as someone that will be, the ruler of humanity and the savior of humanity. That the uniter of humanity, the completer of humanity, to whatever, like, you however you want to describe it. Can describe it very, very scientifically. Could say the head of the assembly, which is like you stack